Hey, hi everybody. How's it going? Sorry for the late start. I was being a dumbass and installing Windows 11. Hi. Of course, you know me. My name, of course, is Alma Hexplay, your head barista, and what's the other word? Local guildmaster, head guildmaster, and local barista. That's what I usually say. I think. And today is Friday, and you know what that means. Today is another installment of Findin Out Fridays, which is our little media share um day. So let's enjoy ourselves. I realized that the audio was not going, so there we go. That's better. And let's see what we have today on the docket. I'm just gonna pull everything up here. Okay. Game stream, and let's swap over to perfect. Okay. So I'm just gonna bring up these videos here in the background. There we have a couple of videos today. They all seem very nice, so that's cool. I also realized that the default audio is not working. Why? No, the speakers should go to system. There we go. Okay. So I think I got that working too. Yep, okay, got it working. Awesome. So I'm just pulling up all the videos that we got today. We do have so many of these things. Okay. They're all pretty long form. Just gonna warn you now. So, but if you're ready for a ride, I hope you guys will enjoy, of course. And there we go. Our first video here is from Claire. It is let's see here. It's Wheel Lock 101 History and Shooting. Ooh, so this is a video about I think it's what? Firearms? Like history of firearms? So that sounds cool. Um I think yeah, I think this should be good. I think I think the top of his hat's cut off. Hold up. Nope. Wrong one. There we go. Yeah, the top of his head was cut off. There we go. All right.
Pretty much everyone had gone over to flintlocks.
Oops. Did I link the vid with from temps? Yeah. Did you mean it from the beginning? Because we'll start it from the beginning. I saw that it had a timestamp, and I was kind of worried, or I was kind of curious, but it's okay. We got it from here. Oh, oops. Gun. It was like, this is the history of a flintlock pistol, right? Yo. It's cool.
Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and today we're doing Wheel Locks 101. I've covered some of these in the past, and people are always really curious about them. They're a weapon system that's very foreign to what we have today. So I figured, let's take a chance here and take a closer look at this one and do some shooting and discuss its history, and mechanics for that matter. Now, this particular wheel lock is actually a hunting rifle that is owned and actively used by a friend of mine named Mike Carrick, who's an editor for Arms Heritage
I really
Magazine.
like
Definitely
this.
a thing to check out if you're looking for more information.
This section right here, like where the stock is, it's very pretty.
This particular rifle was manufactured in 1991 by a guy named Earl Wyatt in New Zealand. So it is most definitely a modern reproduction. It's got a high quality steel barrel, it's got good sights on it, but it's designed in the exact style of a 1600s German hunting rifle. In fact, in the style of one that I did a video on not that long ago. So one of the first questions that always seems to come up with people when they look at a gun like this is, how do you hold that? Because it looks really awkward with this stuff going on and this thing on the butt plate. Well, the answer is you actually, while it looks awkward, you hold it kind of like it looks like you ought to. So you got 3 finger grooves here, plus a space for your trigger finger. And then it just comes up into your shoulder like so. Now, the reason that
It looks
there's this
really
steel ball
uncomfortable
on the butt plate
to be
is to
doing
protect
that.
the butt plate itself when you're putting the gun on the ground. So you can stand it on that ball, and that takes all the brunt of being scratched up on the ground. The reason you need to do that a lot is because this is a muzzle-loaded rifle. So historically, we know these were around at least as early as 1512, because there's a surviving royal declaration from Maximilian I forbidding ownership of these to people in, I honestly don't remember what country, but it's a surviving decree, and it tells us that the guns certainly existed as early as 1512, which means they probably existed earlier. At this time period, in the 1500s, the typical military firearm was actually a matchlock. And the idea behind a matchlock is it's an extremely simple muzzle-loading rifle. You've got a touch hole at the back, and you literally carry a lit, smoldering match. Usually this would be like an ammonia-soaked piece of rope or twine. And you touch that into the flash hole, and it sets off the gun. That was reliable, and it was cheap, but it had some downsides. Namely, you had to be wandering around with a lit match all the time. And so, of course, if you lost track of it, got distracted by something else, the match could go out, and then you'd have to light it again. And by the way, in 1500, you couldn't just be carrying around a pack of Bic lighters. It also had the potential hazard of, well, you're also carrying a powder horn full of black powder, and if you manage to carelessly get your lit match into your black powder, say when you're loading the gun, it goes kaboom, and it blows you up, and that's a problem. Now, the wheel lock offered an alternative to a lot of those problems, although it brought its own problems instead. So the advantage of a wheel lock was that you could wind it up and have it ready under spring tension to fire with the powder pan closed, protected from the elements, and you could carry this around loaded and not have to pay attention to it the way you would with a matchlock. The downside was these are a little less reliable to actually fire than matchlocks. It's not uncommon to pull the trigger and have the wheel spin and it just goes pih, and nothing happens. In addition, in the 1500s and 1600s, you didn't exactly have modern manufacturing technology. So there were a lot of issues with low quality materials, low quality barrels, low quality springs. Easy to have a spring that doesn't quite have the right heat treat to it and it loses tension. All of those things can cause major problems on a gun like this. So these kind of tended to remain guns for the wealthier folks in society. This wasn't a peasant's rifle. Now, they were actually used by knights in armor on horseback, the guys we always normally think of as riding around with swords. Well, those guys recognized that firearms, and wheel locks in particular, were quite effective weapons. You're not going to be riding around on a horse with a matchlock. That's really awkward and problematic, but you certainly could do so with a wheel lock or a pair of wheel locks. And this is where our concept of the cavalry carbine really actually begins.
I was going to ask, is wheel lock a name, or is it like the naming of the mechanism? Because I don't see the wheel part in a wheel lock. Like, it could be a name, so I don't know.
It was this, not quite a full-length rifle like this one, but a shorter carbine or musketoon that could be carried by a soldier on horseback or a knight, or alternatively, a pair of wheel lock pistols. Not uncommon to have a pair of holsters on the saddle of your horse, carry a pair of pistols there. That concept actually came right down through history, through things like the Walker Dragoon pistols and the Rothsteyr 1907 cavalry pistols. But it began with wheel locks. The typical military rifle of the time remained a matchlock, though. There were
it's the
some
mechanism.
military forces that were equipped with wheel locks. There are castles in Europe that are full of literally thousands of these from various military forces. But in general, it would have been matchlocks simply because of the reduced cost and the simplicity. And the wheel lock kind of stayed this dead end of development, and it wasn't replaced. The matchlock was ultimately replaced by the flintlock in military service. By the middle of the 1700s, these were pretty well obsolete. Pretty much everyone had gone over to flintlocks. They're more expensive than a matchlock, but they're a lot cheaper than this, and they're more reliable than one of these. So most of the surviving wheel locks tend to be kind of fancy sporting guns purchased by kind of wealthy people in the 1500s and 1600s and maybe into the early 1700s. The last one that I'm aware of being manufactured was in 1829, not counting reproduction type guns like this one. And so that's pretty much the period of the wheel lock, 1500s into the 1600s. So the way this works mechanically,
Oh, there we go.
on a flintlock, you've got a piece of flint striking against steel and creating sparks. On a wheel lock, you have a serrated steel wheel that's spinning against a piece of iron pyrite, better known as fool's gold. You can actually see a little bit of the gold here. The rest of this is all sooty because we've been shooting it today. But what you would do is you actually have a spanner wrench, and you have to wind up this wheel. Inside the action, you have a very long leaf spring, and then a chain connected to the wheel and the spring. And when you wind this, what you're actually doing is winding that chain up, so the spring is being pulled up. When you pull the trigger, the wheel is released, the spring pulls down, and the chain spins this thing up, kind of like a yo-yo. Now, in order to set it, I have to first pull this rear trigger that basically locks the trigger mechanism in the wheel. And then I have my spanner wrench here that fits on the square hub of the wheel, and it's going to be about a 3/4 turn, like that. It's going to lock in place, and now the wheel is sprung, loaded, and ready.
The wrench is the coolest part. It's like
into my priming
the
pan
wrench
here.
is so cool looking.
See, there's a flash hole right there. And then, when I'm ready to fire, I drop the pyrite down in contact with the wheel, pull the trigger, the wheel is going to spin, friction against the pyrite is going to create sparks. That will ignite this powder charge, which will then go through the flash hole and ignite the main charge. Spin the wheel here for you guys just so you can see what happens.
Spin. Ooh.
It's actually a little bit, not quite as remarkably impressive as you might be expecting. It is only 3/4 of a turn, but that's enough for that steel wheel to create sparks against the pyrite. All right. So the first thing we need to do.
But does it sound like a coward's toy, or does it sound like a gun?
Rifled gun, and its
When
standard
did guns start
full
sounding
powder
like
charge
guns?
is 100 grains of 3F or 2F, although its owner prefers 3F, black powder. Although we're going to use like a 75 grain charge today, because we're not actually trying to shoot an animal. Typically, you'd have a powder horn, but we're just taking our measured charge of powder, dumping it down the bore. There we go. Now, typically, you would also use a cloth patch around the ball, but the balls we have today are pretty much the exact bore diameter. They're a nice tight fit. So I'm going to put that in there, and I'm going to have the sprue
I'm like
mark
3 years old.
Straight up to give best accuracy. We have this 2-part loading tool. The first part here is used to seat the ball, which I mostly did by hand. And then you have a starter rod. Push it that far in. Once we've got it that far in, we transition to the full-length rod to ram the ball all the way down the action. The full-length rod allows me to finish seating the ball. You'll notice it has a guide here so that I don't damage the crown. Ram that nice and tight down to the bottom. You want to make sure that the ball is tight against the powder. You want the powder nice and tightly packed without any air gaps to avoid, explosions. Next up, I have to wind the wheel. So I'm going to pull this trigger to engage it. And then we'll put the spanner wrench on the side that fits. There we go. Counterclockwise, about 3/4 of a turn on this particular gun. Now the wheel is cocked and ready. And next, I'm going to fill the priming pan.
Okay.
In theory, you could do this with 4F powder. The owner of this particular rifle has found that 3F works just as well, and then it's one less thing that you have to carry with you. Now, ideally, I want to keep the serrations of that wheel clear so that the pyrite sits nice and flush on the steel. If I were going to wait to fire, I would now press this button to close the pan and keep it protected. Since I'm ready to shoot, we'll leave that nice and open. Last thing to do before firing is lift the pyrite into position on the wheel. Now, we're ready to fire as soon as I pull the trigger.
Ooh.
And I even made a hit. Firing a muzzleloader like this, or a flintlock, or a matchlock, one of the interesting things that you notice is that there's a very long lock time. And that means the time from when you actually pull the trigger to when the gun fires. And in this case, you actually have to wait for the wheel to start spinning, to create sparks, to ignite the powder in the pan, and then to ignite the main charge, and then the bullet to leave the muzzle. And that kind of looks like it all happens in an instant, but compared to a modern gun where you pull the trigger and hit a primer and things go off. This happens far slower. This is a difficult test of marksmanship if you are shooting at serious targets, because you have to hold this on target through that whole sequence.
Oh.
If you want to get really good at shooting, get good at shooting one of these.
Hmm.
Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video.
That was
I hope you know
neat.
more about wheel locks now than you did when you first clicked on
I
it.
mean, the only type of weapon, like old weapon I've seen is like a flintlock pistol, and those seemed kind of, they made sense. But the wheel locks sound really cool. I mean, yeah, it has like a little bit of like a spin up time, but it's super neat looking. I like these. Thank you for sharing this. Let's see here. What's next video? Oh, I posted this one. This one is about phone scams, or sort of. I've seen this. I found this channel, Hugh Jeffries, and they post a lot about repairing stuff, which is like what I'm always into. And they had a thing about batteries. So if you want to, replace your phone battery or something, this is a good thing to watch. I just thought it was neat.
Batteries physically degrade over time, meaning everything that has a battery will inevitably need a replacement. However, the shocking truth is that this has become a big market for scammers. Whether a DIY repair or a phone shop down the street, let's see.
Shout out to the Sony Ericsson battery, yeah.
Hi guys, welcome back to another Hugh Jeffries video. In this video, we're going to be exposing common replacement battery scams. Remember when you could tear off the back of your phone, pull out the battery and replace it in 15 seconds? Not only was it convenient, but the company would also sell you a replacement battery when you needed it. However, almost all phones now have internal batteries that are made hard to access and remove.
Oh.
Whether this move was so technology could advance, or companies realized why sell you a replacement battery when they can sell you a whole replacement phone. I'll leave that thought with you. But regardless, the market for third-party replacement batteries is stronger than it's ever been. I'm always coming across batteries which claim to be higher capacity, 100% original, or have some other insane claims. These high-capacity batteries are selling like crazy, with this particular listing having sold almost 16,000 units.
It looks sketchy
in just
already.
Australia
I don't
alone,
like it.
filled with hundreds of positive reviews saying works a treat, just as described, and honest seller.
Works a
The battery
treat.
only has 3 negative reviews, 2 claiming the battery isn't lasting as long as
I know, right?
advertised. There is also several neutral comments stating the same thing. So I purchased 2 of these batteries from 2 different sellers to find out for myself. Both batteries arrived unsafely packaged. An envelope is not how you ship
Unsafely
a lithium-ion
packaged.
battery. If anything sharp were to impact the parcel in transit, it would likely result in the battery combusting. Both batteries claim significant increases over the original iPhone 6s and 5 cells, which were 1,715 and 1440
Third-party batteries
mAh
usually, like,
respectively.
yeah, they.
With the iPhone 6s
These
battery
look
claiming to have more
terrible,
capacity than the
though.
iPhone 12. At a closer inspection, these are apparently named business batteries, with the word business being horribly misspelled on the iPhone 6s battery. The spelling only
The
gets
graphics
worse
on
around
the-
back, totaling 10 spelling
screams,
mistakes across
no.
the 2 sides.
I like the spelling
In the
mistakes.
read,
Spelling
it says I
mistakes.
need to recycle or dispose of properly, and to reduce risk of filler
Filler or
burnie.
Bernie.
Do not attempt to open, disassemble, or service battery pack. Do not crunch, puncture, short external contact.
Do not crunch. You can't eat this as a candy bar. You can't crunch it. It says on the label that do not crunch.
Or dispose of in fire or water. Do not expose to temperatures above 60 degrees.
Temperatures.
And replace only the battery pack designated for this product. With such bad spelling and punctuation, that was a hard read, but what isn't is the real battery's capacity. Connecting it to the JC Pro 1000S, we can read the battery's management chip. Here we can see it's
Okay, so the thing he's using right now, it's like a service device, where it can read the information that is like stored on the battery, like its actual capacity and stuff like that. And as you can see, that you see a firmware number and a serial number, and like actual information that the phone uses. But
capacity of 1430 milliamp hours, 1250 less than advertised. While it is reporting 99% health with 0 cycles, that is meaningless. Both parameters can be reprogrammed using a device like this. So, it could be a used battery with 500 cycles reprogrammed to have 0 and 99% health. As for the second battery, it's a similar story, being 1049 milliamp hours less capacity than advertised.
at least it's an original battery, according to what that said. Yeah, at least it's an original battery. I'm gonna wait until Saribot says anything.
Than advertised. This one reports as an original battery, which could mean one of two things. It's a knockoff battery using the same battery management chip, or it's a used, worn-out battery advertised as having more capacity and then being sold as brand new.
Sari doesn't appear to be here.
It's time we dig a little bit deeper. The outer part of the cell appears to just be wrapped by this gold sticker with all of its fake claims. The question is...
It's also like a really badly put sticker, and oh god,
would you look at that?
That's so easy.
Is the real
which techie nerd guy YouTuber is this? This guy is Hugh Jeffries. He makes he does a lot of repair stuff. Actually, we can bring up his channel after this and show you guys what he does. He's kind of like one of my favorites because he's like in a good niche that I like.
Fake sticker off of the battery reveals the true
it's such a
printed on the front of the battery.
It's such a bad sticker.
By my JC Pro 1000S, this is in fact a 1440 milliamp hour knockoff Apple battery, as I suspected. Its manufacturing date sometime in 2018.
You could get away with this shit?
6S Gold Business Battery.
You could get away.
Well, it's a similar result. The sticker comes off, but this time reveals a totally blank battery with nothing but a data matrix printed on the back of it.
It's just
So it is
really
a knockoff
bad
battery,
sticker.
which of course is not the advertised 2,850 milliamp hours. However, these types of scams don't just affect Apple phones. Another example comes from an old phone I purchased for my collection. This Sony Xperia Play from 2011 has in it a so-called authentic Sony battery. However, just like the
Has
gold
anyone
batteries,
seen an Xperia Play? I wanted one of those as a kid.
It has no spelling mistakes and even has a shiny sticker, which I suppose is to make it appear legitimate. However, with a manufacturing date of 2017, something didn't add up. Peeling up the sticker instantly adds 7 years to the battery, revealing its real manufacturing date of 2010. Continuing to reveal the rest of the battery, it does appear to be a real Sony battery, but a much older one. It's clear this well-used one was rebranded and sold to someone as a brand new replacement.
Feeling nostalgic for phones all of a sudden. Same. Nostalgia for phones is fun.
When it comes to Samsung phones, knockoffs are everywhere.
Oh, here we go.
Pulling out an original Galaxy S7 Edge battery, we can compare it to a replacement.
No, even though modern smartphones are really objectively... Like, yeah, they're objectively better in features and stuff, but... The reason why they are the way they are is because the early 2000s had time just to fuck around and see what people liked. Like, there were, like, smartphones that had, like, slide-up joypad, like, slide-up controls. I remember when there was, like, a smartphone with, like, a 3D screen. Like how the Switch, like how the, 3DS does. But it was kind of the Wild West until people figured out what the hell they wanted.
While only
Also
quite
terrifying.
small, the battery no longer charges and has done some damage to the mid-frame of the phone. When comparing the two batteries side by side, you can see the labels are not printed at the same height.
Where that Motorola phone docked into a laptop. Oh, the Motorola, I think that's the Motorola Apex?
On the
I forgot what it was
named,
but I know that one.
And to the right,
I wanted
that pulled from phones. Based on my own experience,
I bet we can find it on
the
Google.
knockoff batteries tend to miss the writing on the back. One of my replacement batteries has that text, and in a closer inspection, you can see pry marks, indicating it's used and been pulled out of a phone. While I believe it is genuine, it's the only Samsung battery you don't want. If you know what phone this battery belongs to, leave a comment.
It's the Note 7.
Now that you're aware of common scams, how do you avoid them and get a good replacement battery? My advice is to steer clear of so-called genuine products, unless you can find a legitimate business or company selling them. In the case of Apple replacement parts, that's no one. Look at buying from a well-known third party, something with a brand name. This ties the product with their brand reputation. A bad reputation and people won't buy the product. This means they're likely to sell you something of acceptable quality. Don't purchase from marketplaces or websites where a seller can hide behind a username. Buy directly from the company and look up reviews on the brand beforehand. And if you're getting a phone repaired by someone else, ask to see what batteries they use. If you want a guaranteed original battery, the only current choice is to send it to the manufacturer. With the push for right to repair in many countries around the world, we can change this. Right to repair would allow you or a third-party store to buy genuine parts and totally avoid these scams. I hope this video informed you about battery replacements and the necessity of right to repair. And on that note, this has been a Hugh Jeffries video. If you like what you saw, hit that subscribe button and consider checking out the repair tips playlist for more videos just like this one.
So here's his channel, right? So he does a lot of like restoring smartphones, and it looks super neat. Revolting 1970s computer deep cleaning. Top 5 most destroyed phones that I've purchased. Like he has like restorations or attempted restorations of very wild shit, and it's cool to watch. Ooh, let's see here. Restoring the most destroyed iPhone 11 Pro, paid $25. All right, let's do this one. I want to see how bad this one is.
Hi guys, welcome back to another Hugh Jeffries video. In this video, we're going to be restoring this iPhone 11 Pro. This phone has sustained a major impact to the back, not only completely shattering the glass and snapping the frame of the phone, but also leaving a massive dent behind.
Yo, it caved in.
That dent has caused the insides to be pushed outward. The impact appears to have been so hard, it's dislodged the screen, which has ripped off and is nowhere to be found. All that remains of that screen is its earpiece flex cable and the bezel, which used to hold it in place.
Holy shit.
I won this phone in an eBay auction along with an iPhone 7 Plus for $80 Australian. This makes the cost per device $40 Australian or around 25 USD. The phones were strangely packaged in paper towel, however I did receive what I ordered. While I did receive the two phones, I will only be looking at the iPhone 11 Pro in this video. But the iPhone 7 is bent, shattered, and destroyed in a similar fashion to the iPhone 11
It's
Pro.
like it got run over?
It appears its last owners have had some real anger issues.
Like, what do you...
However, before we get started, I'd like to thank iFixit
This is such a
for
cool
sponsoring this video. Their
yeah.
ProTech toolkit has been
Could
my
finally
go-to
afford an
phone
iPhone for
repair
track.
kit for many
Exactly.
years.
If you can fix it,
different bits, pry tools,
you can
and
just
sponges,
save money. It's great.
an essential item for any repairer. Get parts, tools, and guides at ifixit.com/HughJeffries or at the link below.
Fixing things is a good money saver.
I'll start by removing
honestly.
the two pentalobe screws.
Also,
at the
here we
bottom
go.
of the
Here we go.
device,
Here's the start.
and remove what's left of the original display. Using a plastic pick, I can separate the display bezel from the frame. It's adhered into place, and you'll usually need to apply some heat. However, given this bezel wasn't sitting flush anymore, I could find plenty of gaps to squeeze my plastic pick into. Lifting it up and out of place, I can start by removing the two brackets covering the two battery connections.
Please remove the battery.
These screws are tri-wing, so you'll need a specialized bit to
You
be able
replace
to
the
remove
screen on your
those
phone? Yeah,
screws.
no, that's
After
the
disconnecting
basic
the
you really
battery,
need to do.
I can then remove the bracket covering
Is
up
like
the
what?
several
Screen
display
replacement
cables, which
and
we'll
battery
need to remove.
replacement. If you know
As
those
can
two,
see,
you're god.
What remains of our original display cables
man,
are
rip
still
display
connected to
cable.
the board. Unplugging those, I can disconnect the
Okay.
earpiece flex cable and get the old bezel out of the way. Bringing in a brand new screen, we're going to be able to test out our iPhone 11 Pro to see if it even works.
You're testing it like
Connecting
that?
the cables, we can press the power button and see that
Oh my
it is
god.
charging. After leaving it for a few minutes, you can see it successfully booted
Oh
up.
my
but has
god,
locked
it
the
works!
passcode. Now on the eBay listing, it said the iCloud for this phone had been turned off. After looking that up, you can see not only is it on, but it's in lost mode. Given iCloud tracks your location, I drove to a random place and inserted a SIM card into the phone. As soon as it connected to the internet, the device automatically wiped. After a lot of back and forth with the seller claiming they had removed it from their account, they finally figured out that it wasn't removed. So they removed it from their account. I did ask them what happened to the device, but after that, they stopped replying. With the phone unlocked, we can now transform the device back into mint.
Yeah. I didn't know iPhones had that feature. Like, so if it's considered lost, once it gets an internet connection, it'll realize that, hey, I'm lost and wipe its data. That's so cool. That's nice. But also, here we go. Let's watch the repair bits. Let's watch the cool bits.
Condition. For this, I have a new display and adhesive, a new housing, battery, Wi-Fi antenna, and wireless charging module. The wireless charging module is optional, but I didn't know the condition of the old one, so I purchased another. With our parts gathered, it's time to disassemble this iPhone 11 Pro. I'm going to start by removing the logic board, and to do that, I'll need to disconnect several flex cables, remove the SIM card tray, and we're going to take out the rear-facing camera. After
I'm baffled that it works still with that gigantic
rear camera module
bend
and
in it.
Unfasten this bracket holding in the charging port cable.
The bend
then,
scares me
using
so
the standoff
much.
bit, I can unscrew the 3 screws holding it in place and simply remove our logic board.
Also, yeah,
Next
that's
to
the
come out
logic
is our
board of
Face
your
ID
phone. It's very
module,
tiny.
which you can see has taken quite a beating. Moving down to the lower portion of the device, there is 16 screws I'll need to remove from this area, not including the 4 from the bracket we removed earlier. Not only is that a lot of screws, but there is 3 different types: tri-wing, standoff, and Phillips. So you'll need to keep changing your screwdriver bit throughout this whole repair.
They all suck. I hate them all.
After successfully removing all of those screws and a few flex cables, we can then pry up on our charging port assembly, which is still glued into position. Using a plastic spudger, I can help separate that adhesive and lift out the charging port.
Down would drive me nuts.
Next to come out is the old battery.
Oh, here we go.
Trying to pull its removal tabs, they snapped right off. But thankfully the housing is so bent I could just pry it out with a spudger.
Oh no! Poor phone battery.
We can proceed by removing the SIM card eject pin before turning our attention to the top of the device, where we can remove the screws and brackets holding the antenna and power button cable in place.
That's so many tiny screws.
The rear microphone is hidden under this bracket
I would
and
hate
piece
this.
of rubber. Removing those, you can see our microphone.
Oh, I would
I'll need to
hate
remove that, and I tried using various things, but I ended up just snapping it right off. The mistake I made was trying to get out 2 pieces at once. Make sure to remove the microphone first before trying to get its plastic bracket out. I had to remove it with the glass still attached and then clean it off by hand using some tweezers.
Oh my.
This is all necessary because our replacement housing comes with absolutely no new parts, so everything down to the mesh grills and antennas need to be transferred across.
What did they do to this phone?
You can see this one right here is entirely snapped off. We'll be harvesting the screws and installing a new antenna when it comes time to reassemble. I'll also need to remove the many brackets on the side of this phone which hold in place the display. These will be transferred across to our new housing later on. I'll also harvest the screws from our power button assembly and the volume buttons. Our new housing did come with replacement metal buttons, however it is lacking the spring and retaining clip which holds them into place. So we'll need to
how
take
bad
those
is
off
it?
of our old housing
How bad is it? Let's go back to the beginning and just kind of show how bad it got. Let's see here. It was about here.
iPhone 11 Pro in this video. But the
Look at
iPhone
the 11.
7
Look
is
at that.
bent, shattered and destroyed in a similar fashion to the iPhone 11 Pro. It appears its
Someone
last
took a
owners have had
baseball
some
bat.
real anger issues.
Look, it's bent.
However, before we get started, I'd like to thank iFixit for
Like,
sponsoring
what
the place, and you'll usually need to apply some heat during this video. Their Protect below left of the original display.
Holy shit. Yeah, holy shit's right. Like the bezel's still in place. The screen just popped out
Plastic pig, I can
because of how bad they did this. It's just messed up. I've seen phones that literally dropped off buildings and ran over those broken. Exactly.
From our power button assembly and the volume buttons.
Like, these things are pretty sturdy. It takes a lot of effort for someone to not only break the screen, but bend the chassis, which is what, a single piece of aluminum? Just like bend it whatever how much force. I have no idea how they managed to get this much force unless they were using like a tool to intentionally destroy it or something.
Our new housing did come with replacement metal buttons, however, it is lacking the spring and retaining clip which holds them into place. So we'll need to take those off of our old housing and transfer them across later on as well.
The amount of effort it takes to bend unibody aluminum is nuts.
Large parts are easy to remove in comparison to all the little screws, brackets, and grills we need to remove for
maybe
a housing
it was used as a weapon.
It's easy to see how people lose parts and how housing replacements don't get done properly. Even these tiny little pieces of mesh from the speaker grills need to be transferred to the new housing. There is a way of replacing the back glass using lasers, but it's expensive.
I feel the same way.
In the case of this mangled iPhone.
Slammed in a heavy door? I mean, potentially.
With the grills removed, we have completely.
I feel like the exact same way, though.
You can see just how many screws and parts we needed to remove.
So many parts.
In comparison,
why is there so many parts?
S21 completely disassembled. It has a total of 24 screws holding it together, which is slightly more than what this iPhone uses to hold the charging port in place.
24.
Regardless, it's time to get everything transferred into our new housing.
This is the surgery.
Which you can see here is completely empty,
this gives me
but
anxiety.
it's looking a lot nicer.
Imagine fixing it though. This is how I feel. Like, imagine putting everything back together though.
Buttons into place.
Oh, here we go.
Before reattaching the retaining clip and its accompanying spring. The spring attaches to the button itself, but is held in place by the retaining clip as well.
They engineer.
It's a very complicated setup and can be a little bit difficult to align the spring correctly and have it sit in position.
Apple really engineers their stuff to like high heaven. Like honestly,
patience, we managed to get those reinstalled.
Like you could have just used a micro switch, but no.
The brackets, which are responsible for holding our front display in place. With that, it's now time to crack out our new Wi-Fi and Bluetooth antenna cable and get it prepped for installation. I applied some more adhesive to hold it down into position and removed some protective film over some already applied adhesive on the cable. Lining everything up, I can press it down into place.
Everything's just glue and adhesive and just really, really tight tolerances.
After fastening 3 tri-wing screws, it's now time to get installed our new power button
I
flex
really
cable.
don't know why they have
Flex
so many
cable also
screws.
houses the rear-facing microphone and LED flash. I can then fasten the remaining screws for both the power button flex cable and the Wi-Fi antenna.
Just so many screws.
I will also install the special bracket which holds in place the LED flash, and then we can install the microphone. I'll apply a piece of adhesive to help hold it down into place. After which, I can install the rubber piece.
They surely must be
the metal plate
redundant
on
given
top.
most phones don't have near this many.
Next to screw in is the power button itself. After fastening the 2 Phillips head screws, I can adhere down the cable.
Shear pressure often holds a lot of...
For the
Yeah,
volume cable,
yeah.
I'll need to install a new mute switch, which is held in with these 2 metal tabs. Verifying that it works correctly, I can remove the protective film on the adhesive for the wireless charging
This
coil.
is the type of video
and
you show
stick
to people who
everything
think
down into
modular
place.
phones are an easy and listen, modular phones are a hard idea, but it was cool when they made them. I liked them.
With the several Phillips head screws. Afterwards, I can install this piece of plastic which covers
I've
up
opened up a
some of
lot
the
of devices, but
screws
never seen anything
on
like this.
the
Never touched an
left-hand
Apple.
side. I have absolutely no idea what it's for.
Like I've dealt with a lot of Apple devices, and they're very pretty and organized on the inside. It is just a pain in the ass to like get anything done in there, though, for various reasons. One of which it is so very packed, and if you kind of misplace stuff, it's wrong. And also like the screw, like all the screws are meant to be this like a certain height, so you can't misplace one, or else you might like really destroy something. It's like you have to be very, very organized. And also I just keep a guide next to me because who wouldn't?
Seem to have any specific purpose, but it was there originally, and trying to keep this phone as original as possible.
Apple just really likes
aim with
very
this
tiny
repair.
stuff.
Because there's so much inside this phone, it's easy for people to miss installing some of these smaller pieces. But if the repair is done right, it should be good as new. After getting these mesh grills installed, it's finally time to reinstall the charging port. Simply pressing it down into place, I can fasten all of those screws we removed earlier.
Basically, from here on out, it's kind of a home. It's basically just it's the long stretch because Apple does a really good job at making their screens, motherboards, and batteries very quickly replaceable. But stuff like charging cables, cameras, buttons on the side, and the antenna are a pain in the ass for this main reasons because they're all either like glued into the side of the frame or are like behind literally everything else.
This charging port assembly houses a lot more than just a lightning connector. It's got its own motherboard and what looks like some antennas that are connecting to the frame. Reinstalling the Taptic engine, we can connect it into place, as well as a few other brackets which hold down the microphone. I'll install the speaker assembly and screw it down into place. Moving across to the old housing, I'm going to grab this gold contact, which I'll need to transfer to our new housing. This makes connection with the Face ID module, which will go in next. I will attempt to straighten it as best I can. Getting a closer look at the module, you can see the dot projector is cracked at the top, so the Face ID sensor may not work. We'll be installing it anyway, as Apple won't allow us to replace this. Next to go in is our logic board. Once aligned, I can fasten the 3 standoff screws and start reconnecting all of the flex cables.
It's also kind of interesting to look at... Oh, wait, hold on. Let's go back. It's also interesting to note that, like, a lot of the board for the iPhone now is not even dedicated to the processor or anything. It's all dedicated to the other, like, clips that have the other features for the phone. That's most of the space taking it up.
I'll need to salvage the old earpiece assembly from our old display, as it's also paired to the phone. Once we remove it from whatever's left of our old screen, we can transfer it to our new one. Flipping it over, we can reinstall the 3 screws, securing it down into place. Next to go in is our camera module.
Is logic board a trademark name or just words for small motherboards? It's just another name. Motherboard. Oh wait, no, I think I know why. Motherboard usually has a majority of the features, you know? And then, like, if you needed something that has new features, you add on a daughter board to it, right? So, but, because of how things are distributed in the phone, so, like, you know, you have... Not everything is on that board, right? You know, all of it's connecting to cables that connect to the board. So that board, literally all it has on it that's important is the processor, which is the logic. You know? And then everything else is like some connector off the logic board to whatever feature it has.
I'll remove the protective film from the housing and take...
You could say the same for actual motherboards, but motherboards in computers contain a lot more components and everything branches off of that differently. Yeah, everything is in the SoC. Yeah, everything's in the chip itself. The motherboard has more components like power delivery, RAM, memory, storage, chips to use to communicate to other things. But for phones, it's a bit more split up.
Take a look at our old camera. It was dented, and whilst it still worked, it wasn't focusing correctly, and just to be safe, I decided to install a new one.
Yeah, it works.
This used Apple camera will give us the best quality.
After
it's connected,
I kind of hope the Face ID works still.
With its bracket.
And like this is already looking basically
Proceeding, it's time to install our new battery. I could have used the old one, but I'm sure I'd get plenty of comments saying that it was bent and dangerous to use. So to keep those people very happy, I've installed a new one.
I'm very happy.
I'll need to install one last bracket before installing...
Fuck these things, by the way. I've dealt with these a lot. Fuck these things. It's the adhesive to hold the screen in place. I fucking hate it. Kind of makes sense when spaces you need to be able to Tetris things around it, also more when you have different models at different price points. Yeah, Apple...
After
Apple
lining it up into
Tetris,
position, I
yeah.
can press it down into place with a plastic spudger.
Using the variants. Yeah, it's they do a very good job at Tetrising shit.
With that, it's time to get our new display connected
and new display,
and the bracket reinstalled. This will secure all of our cables into position and ensure they don't come loose.
This is the content I enjoy watching, though.
We can reconnect
so cool.
the two battery connections to both the motherboard and the charging port and install the brackets going over each battery connection.
I'm also surprised that Apple does have enough space to just keep brackets on everything.
Good dusting, we can then test out our phone to make sure
protects
it's working
everything. It's kind of nice
before we seal everything back down.
And
plugging it in, you can see it powers on and everything appears to be working all right.
Face ID.
However, in true iPhone style, we get a display and battery message saying the components aren't able to be verified as genuine. With that, it's time to seal up our phone, so I'm going to remove the plastic protective film over the water-resistant seal and seal down our new display into place. After firmly pressing in all the sides, I can reinstall the two pentalobe screws into the bottom of the phone and start removing the plastic protective film, starting with the one going around the edge of our new housing.
It's peeling time.
I can reinstall our SIM card tray, remove the protective film over the Apple logo, and lastly, install a tempered glass screen protector on our new display panel.
Good.
And we're done. So this is
brand new,
an amazing transformation of a once destroyed iPhone 11 Pro. It's now unrecognizable from what we started with at the beginning of the video. I had low hopes when I saw the extent of the damage. While we did have to replace quite a few pieces, there is lots we saved, like the motherboard, charging port, speakers, all of the screws and brackets.
It's like
now
plastic
the phone
surgery.
is back
I love
in a
it.
usable state. However, using genuine Apple parts or not, we cannot avoid Apple's battery and display messages, which now appear.
Fuck
the True Tone function has been purposely disabled because of my display replacement and is now completely missing from settings. You can get it back by reprogramming the display serial numbers to make the phone believe it's the original screen. However, you need the old display to do this. In the battery section, the battery health has also been purposely disabled, and it now says the battery needs servicing. An issue that will even arise if you swap batteries between two brand new iPhones. And as for Face ID, it doesn't work as the dot projector is damaged. An issue I could have easily fixed by replacing the module. However, due to software pairing, the Face ID feature would become purposely disabled. So it's broken Face ID or broken Face ID. While we own the phone, we don't own the software, and from what I can understand, it looks like they can do this until there's some kind of right to repair laws that prevent these types of anti-repair mechanisms. The phone plus repairs totaled $469
here we go. Bomb part.
Around $303 US, which I think
that's
is
pretty
if you're
good.
willing to put in the effort. And on that note, this has been a Hugh Jeffries video. If you like what you saw, hit that subscribe button and consider checking out the phone restoration playlist for more videos just like this one. And
$300 repair out of a, I don't know how much an iPhone 11 Pro costs. How much does an iPhone 11 Pro cost? How much? iPhone. How much does this thing cost? Sweet Jesus. Yo, you ever pay $300 for an $1,000 iPhone? That's some savings. I imagine the Face ID stuff is for security, but other stuff is not. Yeah, so, like, the dumb ones are, like, no. I mean, it was MSRP, so, still. But, like, the parts that I understand are, the earpiece, because I guess it makes sense, but also at the same time, it could prevent, like, you know, being bugged or wiretapped or something. It's a bit weird. But the screen, yeah, that's kind of bullshit. The Face ID camera, yeah, it's bullshit. The battery, super bullshit. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, there's also, so if any of you guys have iPhones that have a Touch ID, you know, like home button, that has to stay with the phone because it is paired software-wise to the processor. And if you replace it, it's considered like, you know, like a security thing, and you can't use Touch ID. You can still use it as home button, you just can't use Touch ID, which is makes sense, still kind of bullshit. But
And if you're looking for
know
any
how they
tips or what
are.
tools I use to repair devices, be sure to check out my website,
Not the
link for which is down in the
best.
description.
Okay, so it's like $700, still pretty good. Pretty good for the pricing in terms of everything. What other things has he done? Oh yeah, he talked about how apparently a nightmare it is to repair an iPhone 13. And repairing some Android phones if you're interested for that. Dell's answer to unupgradable laptops. Like, he does a lot of I like these types of phone restorations and teardown assessment videos. It just makes, it's just interesting. And you appreciate the engineering that goes into it more than just the outside look. All right, let's see what the next one is. Oh, I remember this video. I posted this, the rise and fall of teletext. So, if you guys don't know what teletext is, you guys are in for a treat.
This video was made possible by Morning Brew. Does your remote control have this button? If you press it, you will see teletext, an additional layer to classic linear TV. While teletext never existed in some countries and has been outdated in others years ago, it is still popular in many places today. And it is a fascinating example of a technology that, despite groundbreaking changes in other areas of media consumption, has remained this unchanged zombie from a different time.
So cool looking.
This is the story of teletext.
I like the aesthetic.
Teletext was inspired by the technical possibilities of the time, as it was made possible by utilizing a gap in the transmission of the television signal. CRT television sets work using an electron gun that shoots out a beam of electrons towards a screen. These electrons can be aimed precisely using a magnetic field, resulting in a directed beam that scans across the screen. As it does so, the intensity of the beam varies, and since the electrons make the phosphor screen light up accordingly, an image is produced. There are different types of broadcasting formats around the world.
This is
in the
made
UK,
very well.
where teletext was invented, PAL was used, which changes the image 25 times per second, creating the illusion of movement, what we call video. This PAL system uses 625 lines horizontally. However, only 576 lines are actually used to transmit the image. The remaining lines, the invisible gap so to say, is used by the television to prepare itself to receive the next image. In the 1970s, the idea of using this gap in order to provide viewers with additional information that would complement television arose in the United Kingdom. The publicly funded BBC was interested in using such a system in order to provide subtitles.
That's all why they didn't recommend sitting close to the TV because it was shooting you in the eyes? Well, I mean, in theory, it was getting absorbed by the phosphors, but also I did stand way too close when I was a kid, so... I mean, yeah, that's true.
For their program. And in 1974, the station adopted CFAX, the world's first teletext.
Huh.
The viewer can select certain pages by entering numbers on the remote control. The technology is limited to a certain number of pages, from the main page, 100, to a maximum of 899. The system became a huge success, and gradually more countries started adapting this new British invention, which the UK was quite proud of.
It's a really cool-looking system.
In this business of teletext, that is, providing written information such as news, weather, sports results, or even special pictures on our home TV screens.
A recent survey showed that 98% of all teletext and view data installations throughout the world use British technology.
Sorry, I was not listening to Margaret Thatcher. Do you have teletext in the I don't think we did, or I wasn't alive or paid attention to when they had it. Or I think I already didn't even have a TV that had it.
And that's something we can all be very proud of.
Okay.
Within a decade, almost every television model available came with the option of having a decoder, that is used to receive teletext.
Oh, there we go.
While in the early days of teletext, various different systems coexisted, such as Antiotext in France, which was developed parallel to CFAX, all different systems could eventually be standardized to World System Teletext, clearing the way for the colorful decades of teletext to begin.
I love the
At a time
little
when
I
personal
love the
computers
aesthetic
at
of it
homes
so
were
much.
still far from widespread, teletext already allowed people to quickly access information such as up-to-date stock prices, the weather forecast, all sorts of sports results and live tickers, as well as departure and arrival information from the local airports.
It's a cute little airplane.
But especially, teletext became popular for following current news events.
US chemical waste will be processed in South Wales, providing there is no abnormal risk, says Mr. Shaw. That's going to be interesting.
Very British.
Instead of waiting for news shows to appear on television or radio, you could follow the latest up-to-date news. A new way to consume, as the user of teletext was an active determiner of the content that is shown on the screen, clicking from page to page at their own pace.
Kind of
And
wild
news
when you think
reports
that.
came in much
Yeah,
faster than people were used to.
This is basically like the
Sometimes
internet, isn't it?
resulted in a few more errors as well.
Stanley, good morning.
Morning.
What's your question?
It's a
please?
very
Well, I'm a bit
internet
amazed
thing.
at the spelling and grammatical errors that occur.
Well, everybody makes spelling mistakes. You have to face the fact that our sports news is incredibly fast. It's going on over here at the moment.
So it's
And
my
if-
friend there in the pink shirt whose fault it is if there's a mistake, is it?
Well, that's Kevin, and he's typing it in now. And if he
Yes.
makes a mistake, Mr. Bradshaw will see it.
Though the internet works by a computer sending requests to receive information, the
Is that a picture of
transmission
rats?
teletext is
Hold
linked
up.
to the television picture.
Rats.
Since only a small amount of data fits into each individual blanking interval, the pages are transmitted in an endless loop. So if you as a viewer want to
what?
look at a certain teletext page,
God damn it,
you may
Kevin.
have to wait a while until the data is transmitted via the television signal.
It's Kevin's fault.
Sometimes that can take a long time. More modern devices, on the other hand, have memory built in, which continuously saves all the pages in the background, which in turn enables quick selection.
Ooh.
Teletext is not a pure text medium. Broadcasters also use the technology to display graphics.
I really like
with
the
a very
graphics.
unique look.
They're so cute.
Teletext has a fixed number of columns and rows in which characters are displayed. In addition to the usual text characters, there are also block characters. By combining these blocks, graphics can be displayed. The images shown are therefore always made up of a mosaic of characters,
Basically
and a
how
lot
it
of
works
skill
is
is
that it's
required to
semi-fast.
achieve
It
recognizable images.
Oh, it
using
caches
this
pages,
technique.
basically. Neat.
This process may also be reminiscent of so-called text art, which later became popular in chat groups on the internet. In addition to the latest news, teletext is also used to provide additional information about the
Imagine how
program.
Christmassy
For
makes you
example,
feel. Yeah.
what show is on next. And it can even be an additional source of income for TV stations. Oftentimes, competitions and lotteries are advertised in which viewers can take part via SMS. Individual pages are also sold off as complete advertising space, sometimes used by larger corporations,
Kentucky.
oftentimes used by telephone erotic hotlines.
Huh.
Some broadcasters also allow viewers to have their own text messages displayed on teletext by them sending an SMS to a number that charges them a fee.
This seems like a
Used by
problem.
people to greet their friends, send romantic messages
Seems
to their
like
partners,
This.
advertise their own business,
Oh boy.
or share anything else with the world.
Can this be exploited? Can this be exploited?
In addition to the
The first
content
digital
increasing in
hentai.
variety,
Hell yeah.
teletext technology was also further developed. Teletext level 1.5 allowed the reception of additional characters for other languages, as well as more special characters.
Ooh, European. Ooh,
And with Teletext 2.5, the color palette was increased to now offer 4,016 different colors. And the resolution of the image content is significantly higher, which is primarily used by TV
Wow,
stations
look at that
for
circle.
their logos.
It's a
However,
really good
this
circle.
standard is not particularly widespread, for a number of different reasons. On one hand, For pages with complex, high-resolution content, it is necessary to transmit the data
Well,
over
it's heavily
several
moderated. Okay, yeah,
passes through the
fair.
television
It just
signals,
seems like
which
a
can
problem. I
further
don't know.
lengthen the waiting times for each page. In addition, the teletext can only be received with a corresponding new decoder,
The hell?
which is why it is necessary to
Is
also
that?
keep broadcasting the graphics with the lower resolution in order to guarantee a proper display on any TV set, old or new.
None of it is remotely automatic. Oh, thank goodness.
Teletext was most successful in Europe, where in some countries virtually every TV channel had its own teletext service. But in countries outside Europe, the technology didn't spread
Yo,
as
Arabic
easily.
teletext.
In the United States, for example, NBC and CBS began offering teletext in 1984. However, they did not rely on the world system teletext standard used in Europe, but rather used their own new standard, NABTS.
Oh,
This system, from the start, was able
Okay.
to display much more detailed graphics
You
such
know
as
how
the
to-
station logos. The disadvantage, however, was that a special decoder was necessary, which was significantly more expensive than those used in Europe.
you now have
In
two
addition,
competing
the television
standards.
manufacturers only offered these decoders in those places where the broadcasters already offered teletext, which in turn meant that neither television manufacturers nor broadcasters were willing to take the first step.
Rep.
Later, some stations started further attempts, this time using the British standard. For example, Electra Teletext, which was broadcasted by various US TV stations for 12 years. Ultimately, however, it didn't prevail. The FCC, an agency regulating television in the US, mandated that by 1993, new TV sets sold needed to be able to display closed captions. TV manufacturers therefore included closed caption
Captions.
decoders,
Oh yeah, in the
and
V
teletext
blank.
decoding was scrapped. A decline in the use of teletext can also be seen in many countries where teletext once was very popular. After 2 very successful decades for teletext,
2012.
a difficult time of change began. Over the course of the 1990s, the internet began to make its way into private households on a large scale. From
Internet
the beginning,
time.
it also competed with teletext, over which the internet was technically clearly superior. And at the turn of the millennium, not only did the internet lead to digitization, but television would also be brought into a new era.
Digital.
In what is perhaps
Well,
the biggest
not
transformation in the history of
yet,
television,
but-
nations worldwide started transitioning from analog broadcasting to digital TV.
A piece of broadcasting history is about to be made here. The rest of the UK is going to follow suit, and by 2012, the whole of the United Kingdom will have gone digital.
The
Wait,
switchover
2020?
was necessary at a time when modern workflows in video and sound are completely digitized.
The UK
And it made
didn't
it
transition until
possible for people
2020?
to receive a greater number of different TV programs, which could be transmitted in better quality. For digital TV, a lower frequency range is necessary. With the shutdown of analog transmission, those frequencies could then be used for 4G internet.
Or
As
2012? I heard
time-consuming as
2020.
the switchover was, it made it possible for television to further develop in many different ways. The long-existing HD standard was finally able to really
To be fair, the
become
sheer
the norm.
convenience telefax was very
And
the
stations
internet.
developed
Yeah,
alternatives to teletext that offered more
Ooh.
capabilities. It is possible to
pretty.
continue teletext even if the mode of transmission were to change. But for many broadcasters, it seemed much more appropriate to use this digital transition in order to bury this outdated technology as well. The BBC fully replaced CFAX with its Red Button service, a more capable digital version of the same idea, with a design that isn't as limited. When the last analog signal in the UK was switched off in Northern Ireland on October 23, 2012, CFAX, the world's first teletext, also ended its service after 38 years of operation.
Analog television has seen many technological advances and additions since the days of Baird and Marconi. Now, though, we enter a new era of broadcasting as this becomes a fully digital UK. From the analog BBC television service, good night and goodbye.
Aww. It looks boring, but I mean, you didn't have a lot.
In this digital age, many people seem to find a new appreciation and awareness for the unique look and feel of teletext.
I'm not crying, you're crying.
In an effort to save teletext in the UK, fans of the discontinued BBC CFAX have even created their own crowdsourced version called TFAX, which can be accessed using a Raspberry Pi computer that feeds the signal to any home TV. Though these enthusiast projects are all that's left in the home country of teletext, in many other European countries, teletext has actually survived the digital transformation. It is transmitted digitally through cable, or even using the internet for the growing number of people that receive television through IPTV. Really, there's no technical reason to keep this blocky look, to not expand what teletext can do. But the mixed reception of teletext alternatives has shown that many people don't want teletext to change. Since teletext has survived the big disruptions of the digital switchover in so many countries, what really should stop it? And fans of teletext have even created artwork using it. In order to advocate for the artistic value in teletext, the International Teletext Art Festival was launched, which cooperates with the public broadcasters in Austria, Germany, and Finland.
Oh, it's pretty.
The broadcasters made certain pages of their teletext available for this special festival, which every television viewer could attend at home. In addition, artists created live teletext art as part of an exhibition in Linz, which was projected onto large screens. Visitors could also take part in this exhibition themselves and create their own artwork. Teletext has made it into the digital age without even having to adapt. Some broadcasters even offer their teletext content available on web browsers and apps, but they still display it in this mock-up design of the original teletext, because that's what people expect. And I think there's something to be learned from this popularity. Technical limitations can often appear as a hindrance for designers that limits the experience that they can create for us consumers. But I think that teletext is a good example that if the constraints of a medium are truly embraced, the result can be a unique visual language that fits extraordinarily well. More technical possibilities can lead to new ways for designers and
Transrace colors.
to
well,
express themselves.
Transrace colors is
not
what,
the
the
only
CJ
way.
color palette? It's one of them.
Technical limitations also can inspire creativity. When it comes to my appreciation of teletext, a lot of nostalgia may have
Oh,
played
hey,
a
look
role.
at, max
But I
headroom.
think it still can be interesting to look at these technology cycles. When teletext was introduced, personal computers were not present in households. But
Teletext
teletext
VTuber.
was a precursor of a
I
near
could see
future
it.
in which
happen.
information could be accessed in real time. And today, this future has come. And teletext is attracting a renewed interest for its aesthetic, from artists such as Dan Fairmont, who says, "To me, it will always represent the future, specifically that predicted by countless 80s sci-tech films and TV shows. Though they might not have been 100% correct, teletext does continue to thrive as a counterpart to the internet."
While teletext changed the way we consume information 40 years ago, today there are also
It's very
new ways
cool.
I found it
Like, I really, like, I never heard of this, but I knew that, like, these primitive, like, text-based systems existed. Like, like BBSs and stuff, but never this. This is super neat. Makes me sad now. I wish I think it'd be too niche for anyone to care. I don't think it's super niche. Or I think it is, like, it is niche, but I care about it. I now care about it. I care. I do care. But is so cool. I don't know, aesthetics are cool. And, that type of thing is just, oh man. All right, this one is, what was it? The life, embarrassing death, and legacy of the Steam controller. If you remember Valve making hardware in the years past, then you might know about what the Steam controller. It was on sale, and it's not on sale anymore. But it used to have really cool stuff. And let's learn about it. Let's do a learn. Oopsie.
Welcome to Too Late Who Gives a Shit, the show in which I talk about to a satisfying...
Oh, fuck. I accidentally nudged it there. Put on my best British accent.
Welcome to Too Late Who Gives a Shit, the show in which
Good
I
channel
talk about
name.
old controllers
Or
that
good
weren't
series
popular
name.
even when they were in production. Controllers that can play Vivaldi on their haptic trackpads. The Steam controller began as part of Valve's Steam Machine project, which was basically the console version
They
of a
wouldn't
PC.
ship this to Europe.
They
Oh,
wanted to make couch
no.
play better for existing customers while also making it as easy as possible for console gamers to transition to Steam, something that they were already doing in large enough numbers to pressure Microsoft and Sony into releasing mid-gen Pro systems. Valve was also worried about the direction Windows 8 was taking and wanted to reduce their dependence on Microsoft, deriving their own Steam
were pretty
operating
bad.
system from Linux. Valve's consoles needed a gamepad that would be able to play the full Steam
Like,
library,
I can't get the
a
Steam
feat that
VR
could not
thing
be
either.
accomplished
Oh,
with
no.
analog sticks alone.
Damn, shipping's a
And
pain.
those are all the factors that led to the Steam controller.
One of
You gotta be
the
kidding me.
drivers behind us making a
there
controller
more
was
of this?
was actually VR.
Cut! Their first instinct was to use motion to simulate mouse movement, but they found it too tiring in some use cases, so they moved on to trackballs next. The appeal of the trackball was that large movements could be done on a small surface area by spinning the ball once and letting it roll, as opposed to swiping a conventional trackpad over and over. The trackball needed to be large to provide enough precision and required regular cleaning though, so Valve settled on a combination of trackpads with haptic feedback. The advantage of this setup was that the haptics could still mimic the mechanics and feeling of a spinning ball to a satisfying degree while taking up less space, being more durable, and also emulating other inputs, like analog sticks or scroll wheels.
It does such a good
The
job
controller
at the
also included
haptics,
the
too.
motion sensors Valve initially experimented with for good measure. But are trackpads in motion genuinely better than sticks, and by how much? I've learned from past
They were
videos
pretty
that
good.
some people are really stuck on the analog stick. It's hard to get empirical proof that one input type is better than another, but AimLab is about as close as I think it gets. It's a free game devoted to analyzing your aiming in great detail. If you're watching this, there's a chance that you've seen Gyro Gaming's comparison video using the software. I similarly pitted the Steam controller against other input types, testing each until the results plateaued and became consistent. Analog sticks alone yielded an average score of around 27,000. They almost require you to get right on target with a single flick, otherwise you'll have to make small corrections with an input that's terrible at doing that. The mouse averaged 34,000. I expected it to perform better, but using the inputs back-to-back in the same context like this makes it clear how much better the mouse really is. It's faster, more fluid, and can make adjustments more easily, which is what the Steam controller was setting out to emulate. So when trying the Steam trackpads out, I got the worst damn results by far. I managed to improve to an average of 26,000 with practice, but it goes to show the type of learning curve the pads have that even after 5 years I'm this bad at handling them. There is more fluid movement than a stick, and there's more potential to improve, but it's a finicky uphill battle. Applying any pressure
It's
at all
good,
will
though.
create friction with the pad, and thumb movements will take on a jerky start and stop quality. Just barely grazing the surface allows for smoother movement, but you often run out of pad before hitting the target and have to make multiple swipes. The trackball spin trick works when broadly turning the camera, but not so well when aiming like this. I'm sure someone out there has mastered the pads, but I've never found them to work well enough to aim on their own, and I don't seem to be alone in that. The consensus I've seen online is that it's best to use the pads for camera movement and then the gyro for aiming. And to my surprise, the gyro scores not only left the trackpads in the dust, but handily bested mouse input at nearly 38,000. The advantage of gyro is that there's zero friction. Unlike a mouse or stick, which have to be pushed out of a neutral position, the gyro
I
cursor
really
is
like
always
gyro
loose and in
controls
motion,
sometimes.
making it faster to move from target to target in my hands. The downside
Does
is that
make
it's
aiming
less
really
stable and
nice.
easily shaken off target by trigger pulls, but this can be controlled with a little bit of focus. For the hell of it, I also tested the Switch and DS4 gyros and got even better results, along with my single highest score of 42,000. These controllers don't seem to lose calibration as often and were far more sensitive by default, forcing me to turn down the in-game settings to get the same feel as the Steam pad. It's hard to say, but Steam seems to be at a slight disadvantage here. I did some digging on this and actually found the sensors used by the controllers and, I'm gonna be honest here, I don't know how to read. All these letters and symbols are the same to me.
He tried.
Of course, aiming alone is just one measure. The trackpads didn't excel for me here, but they do beat sticks in most scenarios that need mouse movement. So yes, when combining the trackpads and gyro, the Steam controller can offer better, more mouse-like movement than an analog stick, but it all depends on how good you are at using them and how the game lets you use them. The best case I've found for the trackpads isn't a Steam game, but the Metroid Prime trilogy. With a mouse and keyboard hack, the game is perfectly at home on the controller. I was a huge fan of Wii Remote aiming, but Metroid missed the boat on customization options, being locked to slow turning and cursor speeds. With Prime Hack, the Steam controller trackpads allow snappier turning than a stick while the gyro does the aiming, and I can only hope that the official remaster that's been rumored about controls half as well as this. Okami has native support for the controller and allows much faster drawing on the pads or gyro, making it arguably the definitive version. But in my experience, the main benefit of the trackpads isn't accuracy but flexibility.
Look at
Unlike
that
a stick, they can
customization.
easily function as buttons as well as a mouse. The D-pad directions or ABXY can be set to quadrants on the clickable pad surfaces, eliminating the need to move your thumbs from them at all. Movement is a little awkward on the left trackpad, so most people opt to use it as a D-pad and move with the analog stick instead. In this no-click mode, the haptics can simulate the feeling of a rocking D-pad with unnerving accuracy. It's hard to communicate through sound and visuals alone, but it works better than it should. The pad also enables a great toggle for gyro aiming. Instead of leaving the gyro on at all times like Splatoon, or only activating it when aiming down sights, you can enable the gyro anytime by resting a thumb on the pad. Typing prompts can be handled with greater speed and ease than a controller has ever had before, with the trackpads functioning as a split keyboard. They can also be used as virtual touchscreens with on-screen UIs and customizable icons. I can make all 9 item slots in Resident Evil 5 immediately accessible on the right trackpad, eliminating the need to fumble with the in-game menu at all. Mode
I did not
shifting
know
allows
that.
features like this to work by altering what the inputs do when a designated button or trigger is held. If there aren't enough buttons to fit all the actions of a game, you can switch to entirely different mappings on the fly and effectively double or triple the number of keys.
Like, the customization for the
grip
Steam
buttons
controller
on the
was
underside
so
are perfect for
really
this,
cool.
Or for absorbing actions you don't want to reach down to the face buttons for. The triggers also double their usefulness by adding a GameCube-style click at the end, which can be mapped as a separate action.
Wait, what?
Valve's favorite use for this was to combine aiming and firing into one trigger, with the analog
the
portion
trigger.
going down sights and the button firing. A fast pull still allows attacking without aiming, leaving the left trigger free to absorb 2 other inputs. In this case, crouching on the analog pull and diving on the full pull. All of this is handled through Valve's software, which cuts down on latency by actually altering the controller's firmware to output the desired action directly.
And real-time firmware affords us the ability to take whatever configuration that you have at launch of the game, bake it down into the controller, so the controller, those keys, those buttons on the controller actually send those keys.
The range of customization options is dizzying, but clear enough to understand when taken one at a time. Previously, different software solutions might have been required to do these things with inconsistent success depending on the game. Having all this configuration in one place is a godsend.
More
Whether
stream
making the
controller,
simplest changes
Pog.
like swapping the triggers around
Yeah,
or making
like,
complex, multi-layered reworkings of an entire control
I'm
system.
very happy about
So if the
this.
controller was so
Like,
great,
I'm
why
glad.
did it end up in the garbage dump? There's a plethora of reasons for that. The build quality didn't feel up to a first-party standard.
It was very good,
That Valve
though.
managed to get such a fully featured controller out for $50 is impressive, but you can feel the shortcuts on it. The face buttons are mushy and too far out of reach, almost necessitating control schemes that move their actions somewhere else. To prevent accidental presses, the trackpads have to be popped down with a fair amount of force, and the grip buttons even more so. A look under the battery cover reveals that they're not buttons but clickable pockets built into the surface. They work for mode shifting,
they're
but mapping frequently
pockets.
used actions to them will tire the hands out right away. The bumpers are also ridiculously stiff for no good reason. The overall shape is very comfortable, but everything else is slightly off. The larger issue was probably that the controller's big strength of customization could also be a giant burden. Gaming on PC already requires a lot of tinkering with drivers, benchmarks, and settings, and it doesn't exactly need another battery of options to deal with before being able to play. With mixed results, Valve tried to cut the hassle by allowing configurations to be saved and shared. A finished configuration can be saved as a template for other games to use, or community configs can be browsed to eliminate the need to ever create any of your own. But without having decided the potentially complicated mappings yourself, these configs can be completely foreign with a high learning curve. A console will likely have vaguely familiar button layouts from game to game, but a Steam community layout is often a mystery box of tangled actions, layers, and modes. Official configurations set by the developers should be better, but somehow often make things worse. I mentioned that Okami supports the controller, but with a clumsy scheme using the trackpads to emulate analog sticks instead of a mouse. Because there are so many action layers, a change as simple as moving one button may have to be repeated 5 or 6 times to carry through all of them. Almost any community config is better, but as is usually the case, none of them were quite what I wanted and still needed tweaking. In this case, it was worth sticking through because the scheme I ended up with was great and utilized everything the controller could do. But there are plenty of games that don't really need this Steam controller and aren't worth the fuss. Any platformer, for example. The D-pad emulation might work well for quick item swaps, but when put to the test in a demanding side-scroller, the illusion falls apart pretty quickly. The pad surface is so large that even an analog stick feels better in comparison. For at least half the games in my inventory, the controller has nothing to offer over a standard gamepad, which I'm assuming most people who own a Steam controller also have. A heavy keyboard and mouse user would likely feel the same. Many of the games that can benefit are blocked from doing so by factors out of Valve's control. Most games aren't designed to accept random inputs from different controllers at once, severely limiting what otherwise could be incredible control schemes. Gyro and trackpad input work best when mapped as a mouse, which rarely ever functions alongside X input. Getting the best from the Steam controller's top features means that you either have to mode shift between controller types, or go all keyboard and give up advantages like analog movement and clear button prompts. The hardware has the potential to do anything you want, but the infrastructure doesn't exist on the game side to actually use it, and there's a limit to what Steam can force by itself. Valve invested a lot to get the controller where it is, so that it could improve a few games, cause a lot of headaches in others, and then die pitifully in the corner. It's a demonstration of the risks involved with trying to innovate and a clear case for why the controller field has stagnated so much. The modern gamepad was basically settled in 1997 and has mostly seen minor refinements since. The same could be said about keyboard and mouse, although if I really wanted to push it, I could say that it hasn't fundamentally changed since before most people watching this were born. Yes, the new versions feel better, but if you could plug this decades-old hardware into a PS5, it would play most games just fine. Once something has become standardized, it's very hard to break away from it. Your muscle memory probably makes you shudder at the thought of using a different keyboard layout, even if it might work better. It's hard for developers to adopt a new approach to controls, and it's even harder to get players to adapt. Valve's biggest mistake may have been that they were too ambitious in revolutionizing input, leaving most who tried the Steam controller more than happy to slink back to the status quo. But the failure of the hardware itself doesn't mean that Valve's larger endeavor was unsuccessful. Steam input lived on and absorbed every major gamepad, offering the same level of customization to more familiar and arguably better controllers. The criminally underutilized motion and touchpad of the DualShock 4 can work to their full potential in any game now. And Steam input can even allow universal native button prompts to appear for it and Switch controllers when the developer supports the API. It's been an absolute sea change in terms of how controllers work on a PC. That proliferation of options seems to have spurned a lot of further innovation by the community. Because Gyro can handle aiming on its own, it becomes redundant for the analog stick to function as it traditionally has. So Jib Smart came up with a new way called Flick Stick. The right stick is used to instantly point the camera in any direction. Pressing left, for example, results in a hard 90-degree turn. Something like this has the potential to be the next evolutionary step beyond gyro aim, and makes Microsoft's stick-only future look absolutely ancient in comparison. Valve didn't come up with it, but they kicked the door down, and it seems like the exact kind of community response that they were hoping to see to their efforts. The DNA of the Steam controller can also be seen in Valve's Index, which features a haptic touchpad. It may just be pure coincidence, but it's hard to look at the grip buttons and firmware-based mapping of Microsoft's Elite controller without wondering if they were looking over Valve's shoulder during the beta testing phase. In terms of continuing ripples of influence, the Steam controller was actually pretty successful.
Oh, swappable controls.
A few patents have hinted that a second version isn't entirely out of the cards, and it would be nice to have that upgrade, since the Steam controller has abilities that no other gamepad has been able to fully replace yet. But looking at this controller as well as the Wii Remote and Kinect, it seems like the lesson for developers to take away is that radical new form factors don't survive in the controller space. At least for non-VR gaming.
Oh, you died.
Oh.
Whatever lasting innovations these controllers have made have always been carried on by the familiar gamepads people already have and know. We're shackled to them. At best, it seems like you can make one major change at a time before people get turned off. But that doesn't mean that there aren't giant leaps left to make. That Valve tried when no one was asking them to and when no one else seemed willing is a tremendous credit to them as a company, but maybe things are better this way, with the spirit of their innovation evolving well beyond their own hardware. Gaben finds a way.
So, I kind of have an opinion about this. I don't like how that ending part, because in my eyes, the Steam controller wasn't trying to be another controller. It was trying to be the hybrid between keyboard and mouse for playing keyboard and mouse specific games on a console location. Like, it's not meant to replace, like, if you wanted to play a console game, you would use console controllers. If you want to use a keyboard and mouse game, you use keyboard controllers. But if you wanted to use your PC games in a living room, you can't have a keyboard and mouse. That's a pain in the ass. And a controller won't give you enough inputs that you want. So, the Steam controller is the hybrid between the two. And using one for the, and using, you know, things like, you know, like the Steam controller for a platformer is kind of disingenuous because it's a console game. Platformers are usually console games. You use a console controller. There's no need to. For example, like the Steam controller showed off games such as like what, Civ, as one of the examples, and I can understand why. You know. And because that's meant to be played on keyboards. Absolutely. You can't play that on a console. Or with console controls. So, I don't know. I don't like the idea that it was basically like a failed attempt to be a console controller. It was a trying to branch off into this new field that they were trying to figure out. I just wish I could buy another one, honestly. I want to buy another one. I want another Steam controller. Oh, there's another video by Norel. It's about motion control and the rejection of progress. All right, so let's learn about the Wii, everybody.
Nintendo will change game control forever.
Welcome to your motion-controlled future.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the concept for the Halo RTS for consoles. Yeah, exactly. Like, it would be good for it would be killer for RTS, or just something like that.
You will
know?
dance and sing. You will play Call of Duty with a balance board. When you have played too long, you will be reminded to go outside. When you have been outside too long, you will be reminded to play Wii. Let's dance. Just dance.
I've seen a guy play RTS games with Steam control. Exactly, no, they're meant for that. Like, totally.
Wii.
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 The Wii created a rift in the gaming community. To hardcore gamers, many of whom had just bought expensive HD systems, it was an underpowered machine totally reliant on the gimmick of motion in order to sell. It didn't help that early implementations weren't very good. Because the remote didn't have enough buttons, waggle, or meaningless shaking was used to perform actions a button could have done as well or better. Based on the comments that come up anytime motion control is discussed, it seems like a lot of gamers have held on to those negative first impressions.
I really hate gyro aiming.
In fact, I expect this video to get a lot of drive-by shitposting, which is unfortunate because I consider motion to be one of the best innovations gaming has made in the past decade. This video will explore why motion is a good thing and why its adoption has been so uneven. One of the biggest innovations of the Wii was the infrared camera, which would see the LEDs in the sensor bar and use that data to move a cursor on the screen. This has the advantage of bringing your entire arm into the aiming process.
You have like 100 muscles in the arm. You got
Rich Evans!
Complete full range of motions. Large movements, small movements.
You can make big swings from the elbow, or precise adjustments from the wrist. The range of movement afforded by this is huge compared to using your thumb to tilt a stick within a 1-inch radius, with a space for precise adjustment like aiming is a matter of centimeters.
I had a lot of good
The
time.
difference in these inputs
playing
is so
Wii bowling,
pronounced that you can
honestly.
see it in footage. Analog sticks aim in jolting straight lines while motion aim is fluid. When Resident Evil 4 launched on Wii, many people considered it a broken version of the game, because you weren't supposed to be able to headshot every enemy and trivialize the shooting like this.
Good
But many
old
people
Rich.
also
Yeah,
consider
good old
it the
Rich
best
Evans.
version, specifically because the aiming is so good. Sin and Punishment 2 is another example of the same thing. Treasure had designed it with the GameCube controller and expected Nintendo's testers to say it was too hard, because if you're unfamiliar with Treasure, their games are batshit insane. Instead, Nintendo said it was too easy. They had been using the Wii Remote nunchuck, and they made short work of segments that were challenging on a traditional controller. Good luck making movements like this with an analog stick.
Goddamn son of a bitch!
The game had to be rebalanced to work because the IR camera was like cheating in games built for analog sticks. But it's not a cheat to use your own movement. The shooting is only easier because your intentions are realized better. This advantage gets more interesting when looking at competitive shooters, since they pitted remotes and controllers against each other. One would assume that a generational leap in control would have been a selling point for these games, but it was just the opposite. Because of the stigma surrounding the remote, GoldenEye was promoted with a dual analog bundle, with a lot of publications suggesting you'd be a fool for using anything else. It was as if the remote was only good for Wii Sports and didn't have this huge advancement in aiming built into it. This is where we have to address the illusion that dual analog is good enough, that sticks are the ideal input and that any attempt at change is a gimmick. You may have noticed that I'm not aiming at these enemies, yet the gun is finding its way to them. This is the crutch that makes dual analog viable. Because sticks are blunt and imprecise, developers have to deploy a lot of tricks to make it feel like you're aiming well. You can see the aim assist that moves your reticle onto an enemy, but there are hidden layers beyond that.
Don't even have to touch the right joystick. And then when I aim down the sights...
This little cross here that you see is actually where the bullets will bend towards. And as I go over him, you'll see it actually snaps to him. Magnetism basically means that we slow down your turning speed when you get close to an enemy. When you're inside of the magnetism cone, any movement that this guy does, your reticle will try and follow him.
Just don't play shooters on consoles with twin sticks. What's the problem?
This is the reality of dual analog, an input method so poor that the game practically has to cheat on your behalf to make it work. One would think that the people who consider themselves the most skilled players would embrace the first input on console accurate enough to play without these assists, not reject it on sight. These assists are part of the reason the remote never caught on as well as it deserved. It didn't really matter that aiming was better when all you had to do was face the enemy and pull the trigger.
Man, this guy has really, like, divisive opinions. Yeah, look, don't get me started on competitive consoles. Exactly! No, like, the reason why that this wasn't, like, a thing was because it was on the Wii. That's it. It was on the Wii. That was it. You know, it was the console that your grandpa and grandparents did to play Wii bowling. Like, not the super cool shooter thing. The Wii was a souped up GameCube. It was a GameCube with a turbocharger on it. Like, Nintendo had no real intentions to put any of their, like, any shooter games on that console. Like, that's basically it. That's it. Like, it's not because the motion controls are bad. Gyro controls are great. Every modern thing has it now. But the thing is that they're now on platforms where shooters are more common, and not fucking Nintendo. Like, I don't believe the stigma of Nintendo being kiddie games or whatever, quote unquote, is not. It's not like a thing there anymore. It's not a thing, but it used to be a thing. I mean, they had GoldenEye and a few others. Well, the thing with GoldenEye was that it was a remake for something on the N64, so nostalgia played into a factor for it as well. Like, but there weren't a lot, from my remembrance, there weren't a lot of shooters, like first-person shooters, for the Wii. There weren't.
Nintendo took the hint that many gamers weren't willing to move on, and with few exceptions, IR camera aiming died out when the Wii did. Nintendo moved on to gyro aiming, which is a step back in some ways. It has no absolute reference point like a sensor bar, so it loses calibration over time. It's not well suited to big, fast...
That's not... The first part is not true, like, at all. It loses over time? What are you talking about? Over time, if you count, like, maybe a significantly long amount of time, but, like, gyros are pretty fucking accurate in comparison to an IR camera. I don't know what this man's talking about.
Fast motions, and accepting the Joy-Cons. The fact that moving and aiming are no longer separated into different hands makes it a little bit clumsier. But gyro doesn't replace dual analog, only supplement it. Gyro aim allows you to play with a normal control scheme, but when the time comes to make precise movements, the type a stick really sucks at, you get to use motion instead. One would assume that this would catch on more easily than the remote. It's not tied to the maligned Wii branding, it doesn't disrupt a normal control scheme, and can pretty much be ignored if you don't want to use it.
Wait, gyro
and to an extent, it has caught on, but only with a certain audience. For as handholding as Nintendo has become on the software side of things, they've been incredibly bold with pushing players to adapt to new hardware. Splatoon had a pre-release demo that left a lot of people confused and frustrated by the default motion controls. By the time the game launched, most people had adapted, and Splatoon has become one of Nintendo's best sellers using that same control scheme. It takes time to adapt to change, and this learning curve isn't unique to motion control. When dual analog first appeared, there was retroactively hilarious pushback about how awful it was. My first reaction to Mario 64 was wishing I could use the D-pad I was familiar with instead of the new analog stick.
I don't know why. All I can hear about this is gamers whining. Like, part of this sounds like gamers whining. Or with the Joy-Con. Yeah, you can play with the Joy-Con separated. What the hell? Like, that's what's making the gyro movement. Like, it sounds like gamers whining. And I'm like, ugh.
Getting over this curve requires you to devote time and energy to the controls, which a lot of people aren't willing to do for motion.
Splatoon has an option where you can revert to stick controls. And guess what happened? Everyone fucking didn't use it. Why? Because you couldn't do precise sniping with those things. You get outsplatted at best. Like, also, there's more hybrid options. Like, I do left and right for, like, I do left and right. I use both. So I like left and right for maybe like left, right movement, and then vertical up, like gyro up and down to do this. I'm like, what in the world is this guy talking about?
Because it's not cool. It's tainted with casual cooties.
It is. We did it. It's confirmed. It's gamers complaining. This is gamers whining.
Well, they're just too used to sticks to bother. Some Xbox and PlayStation gamers seem to take pride in the fact that their platforms don't have motion. In Sony's case, the DualShock 4 has the same capability as Nintendo's controllers, yet motion is rarely an option in shooting games. It's not as if developers aren't willing to do the work. Many multi-platforms have gyro aim on Switch, and it's because Nintendo's audience asks for it. And that's because Nintendo has had the balls to push through the trial and error of finding something better every generation.
What? I don't...
Microsoft and Sony haven't been known to
happening?
push players out of their comfort zones like this. As a result, their hardcore players are mostly free to think that motion control doesn't work without ever really being challenged about it. But if you want to talk about hardcore gamers, there's no one more hardcore than the PC crowd. The self-proclaimed master race, which retches at the thought of using anything but a keyboard and mouse for shooters. And they seem to like motion quite a bit.
It is. It's really good. I'm gonna...
The feature we're going to talk about today is the motion controls. Oh, it's so easy.
Base Doom.
Headshots,
I know, right?
and it feels
Doom's
really comfortable too.
I was actually quite surprised with the amount of headshots I was able to land this game. So I think the motion controls actually fit MGS5 pretty well.
Not a very publicized thing, but it actually works really well.
Rick! It's Rich Evans!
The Steam controller was intended to revolutionize with its trackpads, but to Valve's surprise, a lot of gamers used the motion sensors to emulate Nintendo-style
What do you know?
gyro
A
aim
Steam
instead.
controller.
Valve didn't advertise the feature much. PC gamers sought it out and adopted it themselves, joining Nintendo's audience in embracing gyro control. So why have the hardcorest of the hardcore accepted motion while console gamers won't? Part of it is that PC gamers are already acutely aware that there are better inputs than dual analog, while console gamers seem fine recycling it forever. There's also less partisanship over controllers on PC since it has so many input methods. Over 21 million controller users on Steam are not using the default Xbox gamepads. The PC audience is open to any inputs that work, and gyro aim does. There's something wrong about the fact that you can use the DualShock 4, a controller that wasn't made for PC, to get gyro aim in PC games that weren't programmed to have it. Yet you can't get gyro on the PS4 itself, where the developers had direct access to the feature to include it. Imagine this for a moment. Microsoft adds gyro to their next controller, and all three consoles have parity with the feature. And by extension, X input on PC would natively support motion instead of having to rely on Steam configurations and workarounds. Developers add optional motion schemes to their games that players can either use or ignore forever. Everybody gets to play the way they want.
Then we're all happy!
What is the threat posed by this, and why wouldn't any PlayStation or Xbox gamer want this option to happen? The obvious reason is that stick-only users would suddenly find themselves at a disadvantage to gyro players.
Yeah.
But if they don't consider gyro to be an advantage, they have nothing to worry about, right? Are we still stuck in the Wii days, where we're too worried about casuals destroying gaming to let motion anywhere near us?
Gamers.
Imagine if I had been able to use the D-pad in Mario 64,
Yeah, I want
and went on
DualShock
ignoring
4.
the stick
Like,
in game after
gyro
game,
controls are good.
playing everything
Gyro
like it was
controls are
Metroid fucking Other M, insisting that the pad was better, while everyone else had long moved on to 360-degree analog character movement. I wouldn't have been able to do this.
Come on, go. That's not fair. God damn it! But fuck it.
While I don't agree with a lot of his opinions, because a lot of it is he's putting the he's trying to be very technical for a situation that wasn't really based on anything technical. It was based on culture at the time. It was kind of weird. It was like, no, they didn't want it because they don't like progress. I'm like, what are you talking about? No, it's because they didn't want a kiddie console. That's really it. It's not deeper than that. Everything else is embrace gyro controls, and it's already moved on to a thing. Also, mainly because gyroscopes aren't like a common thing. I would say that he's gotten better over time. Okay. I mean, understand with forcing a traditionally analog system to another dimension to be competitive. Well, yeah, there's also accessibility issues, like with motion controlling. But anyway, but we know that. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, this video is also 3 years old, so who knows? Okay, what is next? Oh, this is a video about why Facebook went down. You guys ready to learn about Facebook? And why everything was so nice for that several hours? He did say in a follow-up he doesn't want gyro motion to be mandatory. It isn't. Yeah, I mean, it isn't. It isn't anymore because it's an accessibility thing, and a lot of these things are also accessibility. Like, yeah, just accessibility. We love accessibility in this house.
So when it moves, it's changing the route to get between two nodes. When it flashes, it disappears.
I heard people like the Steam controller for that. Yes.
That's it gone.
It was very good for
Facebook.
If a tree falls, what is it? If somebody takes a photo of a tree on
at the same time motion controller accessibility for for people who can't do the precise movements with their thumbs. Yeah, totally. It's weird. Let's just make everything accessible. Come on. Okay. Anyway, let's talk about Facebook. We got to talk about Facebook.
What are they going to be saying in
There's no captions on this one. I'm sorry.
I'm not sure we can put that on a family-friendly channel. Once upon a time, not so long ago, there was a little website, and its name was Facebook. And then it stopped.
It ceased to be.
It ceased to be. Took along Instagram and WhatsApp with it. And so a bit of excitement for those network nerds last night as we watched Facebook disconnect from the internet.
It was really funny. It was really, really funny.
The first thing to say is that Facebook know what they're doing when it comes to networking. They're designing their own gear, they're designing their own switches, their own routers, they're writing their own operating systems on top of Linux to run these things. They're not some fly-by-night operation that don't know what they're doing here. The thing that's probably happened here is that someone's had a bad day at work, they've pushed something up to the servers and to the switches and things, and it just didn't work. And normally when you do that, you get a slight error message. Someone yesterday probably pushed the wrong button and brought down the whole of Zuckerberg's empire. What was interesting about it from a networking point of view is just exactly what happened. This wasn't a case of you couldn't access the website, it wasn't responding, but the computers were still there. Facebook literally managed to disconnect themselves from the internet. The stories coming out from journalists in States and things is that Facebook engineers couldn't get into the building because their cards weren't being swiped, which you can start to understand why that would be the case when you've got such a large network that you're dealing with, and they like to eat their own dog food, and so their whole network is built on top of their own infrastructure. When you get something as catastrophic as this happen, then it's going to be a big problem for them. So the big question then, of course, is what actually happened? I'm using the RIPE BGP replay to look at this. I've pre-recorded it so I can skip through it. If we run back in time, we can get to around 3 o'clock GMT. What we've got here is the network where Facebook's DNS server is. So DNS
Why
is a
have
system
redundant?
which takes the name
This is why you have
Facebook.com
redundant and
converts
separate
it to
systems.
the IP address that Facebook uses. So
Yeah,
watch Mike's
how
video on
DNS
that.
work.
So DNS acts a bit like a phone book. You can look up Facebook.com and you get an IP address back. Well, people actually know what a phone book is these days.
Well, some of our older viewers will. Younger viewers might need to know that it's a book that had telephone numbers in.
Yeah. DNS is the bit of the internet that converts names, Facebook.com, Instagram.com, WhatsApp.com into the IP addresses of the servers that convert that. So what we've got on screen here is this is the network that Facebook's main DNS server is on. And why that's important is when you request Facebook.com, or whichever one it is you want to go to, or your phone's app requests it, it'll end up talking to that, probably indirectly via your ISP, getting the IP address from that, and then it will make a connection to that IP address to actually connect to the thing. So before your computer connects to Facebook's computer, it asks where Facebook is. This red dot is the network that Facebook's DNS server's on. These other dots are just other networks on the internet, so different ISPs and things. We've got Cogent over here, I think it's Telia over there in Sweden and things. Different ISPs that are providing things. And if you look at it on a normal day, Facebook is very, very well connected. They have direct network connections. They peer, as the terminology is in the networking industry, with pretty much anyone who will peer with them and things. So rather than having to connect to someone else, you can connect directly to Facebook. There's a bit of fiber optic.
Anyone remember when Sun Microsystems was? I think I remember Sun Microsystems.
The sheer amount of bandwidth from everyone checking their phone. What we see happening is quite interesting, and it's actually a really good example of how the internet can cope with disruption, because if we just scroll forward in time, we can see that as things start to happen, we get to this point where everything starts to reroute, and rather than going directly to Facebook, you can start to see all is going to Cogent and Telia, and then as we go a bit further on, we suddenly see that everything starts to disappear. Until you get to a point, there we are, where there's nothing connected to Facebook except this one machine down here, this one network. And suddenly Facebook's network, the network that all Facebook's computers are on, is completely disconnected from the internet. And so when you go to look at Facebook.com, your computer cannot find out where the machine is on the internet. So it can't even send a packet there saying connect to Facebook. Not that Facebook will be there to connect to, because it doesn't know where it is. So at about, what we're looking at, about sort of 16:27 GMT yesterday afternoon, 4th of October 2021, Facebook had effectively disconnected themselves from the internet. Their computers were no longer connected
and it was
to the
really
internet.
funny.
Now, this isn't a case of someone going along, pulling all the Ethernet cables out, pulling all the fiber optics out and physically disconnecting them. No, this is a configuration error in a protocol called BGP4, Border Gateway Protocol 4, version 4. And this is a protocol that's it's used by the routers that connect networks together. So rather than having a sort of static map of, if you want to get
I had no idea because I barely use Facebook. It was really funny.
The computers configure themselves automatically. They're constantly refreshing things as the situation changes on the internet. So a network link may go down. Someone might put a JCB through a fiber optic. Someone might misconfigure a server, or that link may just have a lot of data transmitting across it, in which case it's better to route it via a different route because it will get there faster because it's not having to deal with the contention on that link. So you want to continuously recalculate which route to take so that you get the best performance out of it.
Getting a lot of frame drops from rendering.
To do that,
I don't know
you
why.
need to know where everything is on the internet so you can work out which is the best route to take at this point. Now, if it was static, you could use something like Dijkstra's algorithm, which Mike's talked about, run that on all the data, and you can work out the quickest route. Things like AutoRoute or Google Maps, they will often do it like that. They'll use an algorithm like that because the road network's static.
Where's my
you know where everything is, you know the sort of capacity of it.
Open my task manager.
And things, and so you can work out the route beforehand. With the internet, we want to do things dynamically, and so rather than storing everything statically, each of the routers on the internet are communicating with each other using the Border Gateway Protocol 4 to tell them what they can see and where they can get to and what the cost of going that way is and things. And they're exchanging this information, and so the router will get information from another router, and it says, okay, I can get to, let's say, Facebook this way via that machine, but the cost of going that way is higher than the cost of going via the direct link I've got. So I'll send my packet via the direct link. And so it sends it that way. What we saw here is that suddenly those direct links started disappearing. So as the direct link disappeared, it said, well, actually, I can't get that way anymore. I'll go this way, which is why we saw that suddenly it went from everyone going to Facebook.
Then, like,
to
everyone
at this point, you're starting
going
to go
some
through
weird
a few people who are now saying, yeah, I can go that way, and it sort of concentrates to a certain sets of routes. Now, why did that happen? Well, as part of BGP4, the machines are announcing that they can get somewhere and that this network is at the other end of this thing. And what seems to have happened is that around sort of 3-4 o'clock GMT yesterday, Facebook stopped announcing the routes to their network.
Huh.
So they stopped saying to the routers they were connected to, hey, you can reach Facebook 129.134.30.12 here and things. They stopped announcing that you could reach things there. So as soon as they stopped announcing it, the routers they were connected to said, well, I can't get to it that way because it's not being announced anymore. That was a stale route. It doesn't exist anymore. I'll go this way because that is still saying I can reach it that way because you've got propagation times. Router A, which is Facebook say, tells router B.
I feel like I need to watch the video about
but
BGP
router C
now.
is also telling router B it can reach there, and so you've got to wait for it to update and propagate round. So you get this sort of effect where suddenly you get routes that probably don't exist. It's not that they could probably reach Facebook at this point. It's actually that they still thought they could when they told this machine that they could, but actually by the time it updates, they couldn't reach there, and that's when you get things suddenly disappearing completely, and Facebook's no longer accessible because they're not announcing that it exists. Technically, the machine's probably never disconnected from the internet. If you knew that you could send it to this machine and then that would pass it on to Facebook, you could probably have hacked a static route into your machine, and if your ISP did it as well, and actually got the data to Facebook.
Interesting.
But to do that, you need to know these things, and then you have to manually configure it, and that's probably what got Facebook into the problem in the first place, is changing the configuration on the BGP things. Now, why would that have an effect internally? Well, there's probably two things that are probably at play here. Facebook.com probably used the same DNS servers to store their internal things as well.
Which you shouldn't do.
When they did a lookup on them,
which was bad.
They weren't connected to the internet, so they couldn't access them.
Bad move.
But I suspect the other thing is that often when you've got a big network, and Facebook do have a big network, they have thousands, and probably tens, if not hundreds of thousands of machines working on their network, you probably end up building your own internet type network internally. Facebook, Google, Apple, Microsoft, all of these, they're of such a size, Amazon, that they will have their own effectively mini internets, and networks of networks, internetworking, which is where the name comes from, internally. And so they will use IBGP, they'll use BGP internally, or IBGP, which is the one designed for interior networks. And I imagine that the same configuration changes, which made it drop the announcements externally, probably had a similar effect internally. So you're sitting at your desk and you realise Facebook's gone down, so you SSH into the server that you need to configure, but the router that you're connected to doesn't know where to send that packet to because it suddenly no longer knows where things are. And then you probably can't make the voice over IP phone call to the person who can switch things back on, and you've suddenly got a chicken and egg situation. How do we communicate without Facebook and all the tools we use when our network's down, when everything communicates over our network? So how do we bring it back up? I did hear one thing where apparently the people who had physical access to the servers to actually, and the switches to reboot them, didn't have the credentials to do so, and the people who had the credentials couldn't communicate with the things because they couldn't get into the building to get the credentials. And whether that's true or not, or just sort of rumours flying around on Hacker News and things, is another story.
I think they also talked about like what?
Roll things back and then to start re-advertising their routes, which is what happened about 9 o'clock GMT last night. They started to re-advertise things, then they went down again, and then they sort of came back up as they sort of reconfigure things. So basically, configuration error, took it completely out because they effectively disconnected themselves from the internet accidentally. And sort of, I guess it's the sort of BGP equivalent of tripping over the network cable on the way out the door and sort of...
Somebody suggested it was like locking your car keys in the boot and not having...
so it's a bit like that. It's sort of situation, I need this to get things restarted, but I can't get that because I can't access it internally because the network's down, externally because the network's down, and things.
What do you think they'll do after this? Secondary DNS servers, what do you reckon?
So I mean, this is an interesting question. There's going to be... I mean, let's not forget this is an extraordinary event. Facebook have a very resilient network. They have good disaster management things. Things like this happen all the time internally and we just don't notice it. This just happened to be the one event that everything aligned in the wrong way and things went wrong and it became literally big news when you sort of no one can... Well, it would have been big news if anyone could actually tell anyone, but because WhatsApp was down, people wouldn't be able to tell each other what was going on. It's sort of, until Computer File comes out with the news. But there'll be different procedures put in place for how you update the servers and things to make sure this doesn't happen again. But the thing is, you're not going to get it 100% right. There's no way you can get it 100% right because there'll always be some situation where someone could go wrong. Someone on Twitter suggested that there should be a sort of 5-minute period where if it's not confirmed after that, it reverts back to the original configuration. You know, a bit like when you change the display in Windows, you get that sort of confirm within 10 seconds so you can see things. The problem with that is that's fine if it's a problem that will occur within those 5 minutes. If it requires some set of conditions that happen in the 6th minute, you've got the same situation. You can make it slightly better, and I'm sure they actually do have procedures similar to that, but there's always something that can go wrong. I mean, from our point of view, for people who use Facebook or for those of you who use Instagram or WhatsApp, it perhaps should make us think about the way that people build these tools. I mean, this wouldn't have happened in the same way to email. It would be very much harder for someone to bring email down in the same way because the servers are all run by different people, and if you send an email to me, it talks to my server, whereas if you send an email to someone on Gmail, it talks to Gmail's server. If you talk to someone at the University of Nottingham, it talks to someone on, well, actually Microsoft server because they're supporting the network for it and so on. But you might lose Gmail or you might lose my server or whatever, but you wouldn't lose the whole lot in one go. The problem here is all our eggs are in one Facebook basket.
Do not try this at home.
No,
absolutely.
Only try this at home.
Oh, yeah, that's a very good point. Try.
So, like, Facebook going down was a weird time. It was very fun to watch, though. I liked watching it. It's pretty. Okay, we are now on to today's Danger Boy. I like to open up this new segment with a section called Danger with our new Danger Boy. Every Friday we're gonna find videos and watch them from certain Danger Boys, and this was a new one. This person did called I Did a Thing, which is a great channel and great channel name, and he made the world's most powerful hammer. It's very scary. I like watching it, and I hope you guys enjoy it too because it scares the pants off of me.
How you going? I'm still in lockdown, and I'm bored, really bored. So bored, I've been finding ways to make mundane activities more of a challenge and dangerous. But so far, haven't found anything exciting enough. But then I saw the experts, Mexicans. So today, I'm gonna make my version of their hammer.
So he basically made a nail gun.
I'm thoroughly sick of lockdown and being unable to do stuff. Luckily, today's sponsor, NordVPN, allows me to travel the world wherever I want. Here are some photos of me on my recent trip to Paris. And here's me in New York key. I've been a Nord customer for years and love the fact that it's easy to use with a single click, allowing me to access over 5,200 servers in 60 countries that gives me the fastest speed of any VPN out there. It also protects all my internet data behind its ultra-secure wall of next-generation encryption, which is great when I'm being dodgy. Let's say
It uses blanks to shoot nails out of the hammer. It's so dangerous. I love it.
And now I'm in Singapore, watching and hanging out with the cast of Singapore
I
Social.
love it, and
just
it
takes
I
one
love
click,
it. It
open the map,
scares
click
me
on the location,
greatly,
and you'll be connected
and
in
I'm so
seconds.
happy to
So,
watch
to
it
protect
again.
your data and to get the most out of streaming services from all across
Are
the
you
world,
guys
just
ready
go
to get scared? Because I am.
I did a thing to get a 2-year plan plus 4 additional months with a huge discount. So what are you waiting for? Go use my link in the
I showed
description now
Alma
and
Styra
go
of
start
Pyro, and now
surfing
she's
all
addicted
over
to
the
watching
world
young
today.
men do dangerous, super
Alright, now
dangerous
some
stuff
of you
with their
probably
engineering
already
skills.
know
Oh no,
I'm
I was already
obsessed
doing
with
that.
the
I
Mexican
just didn't know enough
explosive
channels.
hammers. And an Australian company, Ramset, beat me to it, making this, which is used to drive nails through brick and metal. And I could just buy one of these, but look at that price, $1,000. I'm definitely better off making my own. So the first thing I did was buy a $2,000 lathe.
Yay!
Okay, so this is my plan. I've collected all the scrap metal in my house.
So I'm just an enabler? Yeah, you are an enabler. Sorry.
Which I reckon I can combine to make this. It's pretty simple, just a block of metal in 2 pieces with a swivel point here. Then you put the nail inside with a charge behind it, and when I hit the nail here, it moves back and hopefully sets off the charge, firing the nail out the end. And some of you might recognize some similarities between this and Stuff Made Here's baseball bat. But look, if he's allowed to copy my steel-toed croc video and make it much better, then I'm allowed to copy his video and make it much worse. And that's my idea, but I don't actually think I have the skills to make this, since this is my first time using a lathe, and so far I've only made this. So hopefully making the hammer is similar. And unlike
great practice
this,
objects.
which is made from round bar and fits in the 3-jaw chuck, I'm using square bar for the hammer, which
Yeah.
doesn't fit. So either I add another jaw on the side,
That thing looks like
or
a blood.
use
I mean,
this 4-jaw chuck.
I'm sure.
And
I'm
this
sure
sounds
that
like
was
an
the
easy
joke.
solution, but when you put
I'm sure that
material
was
in
the
a
joke.
4-jaw chuck like this, it needs to be centered using one of these. And I hate being precise. I always avoid it.
Yeah, I just
but now,
realized it's a
thanks to
butt
this tool, I have the ability to tell how unprecise I am, accurate to 1/100th of a millimeter.
That's what happens when you aren't aware of your
This is
surroundings.
dumb.
You just
I feel
see a
like
surprise
nothing I
butt
do
plug.
makes any sense. I hit this side, and now this side has moved in. And then I turn this thing, and now the whole thing's the wrong way.
Wait, what?
But after mucking around with it for ages, I seem to have gotten the piece roughly in the middle. So I brought in the tool to do a cut across the face.
You can make a plug for guest.
And lathing is a lot of fun and really makes you feel like a man with a big manly tool. Mainly because it allows me to finally grow facial hair.
Manly.
And that facing cut feels pretty smooth. And after comparing it to my face, it's much more flat. Okay, now I'm going to drill a hole in the center of the block. And this is the scary part, as if it's not centered, all the machinist watching will make fun of me.
Alright, here we go. Make the first one. Come on, first. Come on. No. Aww. Yeah, here we go. Behold, the Danger Boy. Yeah, that entire section terrified the shit out of me.
And this sucks.
It's so bad to
I'm
do.
gonna have to start all over. I tried yanking it out by turning the lathe on while holding the other part still, and even tried putting it in the freezer with diced mango.
Like, this shit is the type of not safe for work that I actually like. He hasn't had shoes on and he's wearing shorts. Like, honestly.
But then I had a genius idea. I grinded some flats on the side of the drill bit and used this wrench to attempt to turn it out.
Remember, it gets lube before insertion or you will stop.
Yeah. Which worked, but I still need to make.
I actually realized you're right. I didn't realize he didn't actually lubricate the entire thing.
Use a safer approach and use a dummy and some lubricant.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, he's doing it right.
And I'm pretty sure the lathe isn't meant to be making this noise. So I just put on some ear protection to fix the noise, and that looks pretty good. And the blank also fits.
That's pretty perfect.
Okay, the hole is done and seems to be in the center. So I just cut the tip off.
That was it was a condom. What do you mean that was a condom? Yes, that was a condom. He said he needed to make sure that he was safe.
I had had enough of staring at these blanks and wanted to see what actually happens if I just hit one with a hammer.
3, 2, 1. Yes.
Big noise.
And now without ear protection for some reason.
3, 2, 1.
And I don't know why I did that. My ears are literally still ringing while recording this. But I still decided I want to see what happens if I hit it again, but this time with a nail on top. So I put the nail in, then place the blank underneath. And it's very important I do this in that order so I don't accidentally set off the blank and die. Then I hit
Watch
it as hard as I
him
could.
basically die. Like, tinnitus, fog.
This time I placed a sharper point behind the blank.
Oh, there you go. Oh.
And still nothing. And then I tried placing
When I
the
see him
blank
dancing
on
above the lathe,
flat
I just
metal
assumed he was
and
only...
also
Well, he was
clamping the
wearing
device
jorts
so it
or
doesn't
something, I
fall
think.
onto the ground and then point
But,
towards me.
I don't blame you to think that he wasn't wearing anything under the apron. Because honestly, come on.
God, what the... Holy
He's like a caveman with an engineering degree.
Where did the nail?
He was like, let's test this by smacking it with wood.
Oh, that is...
Oh, there's
terrifying.
the nail. Went through the...
I cannot believe that these say they are weak. I am so glad I didn't buy the strong ones. Let's check upstairs and see if that did any damage.
Yeah, like, what the fuck? It's like it went through his floor. It went through the carpet.
A little too well, which might...
This dude is the Florida man of the UK. No, he's in New Zealand.
Like a sweatshop worker.
Or no, he's in Australia. He's in Australia.
Down until they had an airtight.
Is this like a... Yeah, it's like someone's room.
And I'm really starting to think I should make myself like a Kevlar apron or something to protect my innards. If for some reason anyone watching has some Kevlar they don't want that they want to send me, hit me up. Okay, moving on with the build, I need to make a hinge between the two pieces. So I decided to just use a store-bought hinge, which will attach to the bottom of some flat bar like this. And now it's time for something else I've never done, which is use this tap and die set to create threads in metal. But first, I thought I'd better read the instructions very, very carefully.
He sounds like an Australian. Yeah, he's Australian.
Then, once it was kind of together, I realized a potential
This is the average ability of an Australian.
When I closed the hinge. Which it didn't. So I set it off with a stick once again.
3, 2, 1. Oh my god.
Why does he just keep hitting it with a... Why hasn't he made like a safer like thing for that? He just keeps like... Is he okay? Like...
And let's go check upstairs again.
He's got to take the risk somehow, I guess. It's in the same position. It's in the same location of the room.
I still decided to swap the hinge out for a more beefy one, which
like
I took
the worst
from
part
the
is
door
that
of
it's
this
not like he made that up.
and
It's just
I
he's just
like
doing
this
it
thing.
again.
It's like I'm holding a badly rendered pistol. Now I need to decide on the locks that hold the pieces together. And at first I was going to go with this kind of artistic wanky lock, but I don't actually think it would hold together with the extreme forces on the hammer. So I went with this sturdier one. Then once I tap and not died the rest of the holes, I've essentially got the finished thing. Except it looks really ugly. And after looking online at other kinds of hammers, and other stuff, I found this by Adam Savage, which I'm going to take slight inspiration from.
No one's hit the harbor bridge with a plank of wood.
And
Yeah.
after all that grinding, I was curious as to how much metal I had actually lost. So I measured it, and strangely, I gained around 1 centimeter. Then I cleaned up the other pieces using my sick tech deck skills from my childhood. And so far, this has actually been pretty easy. But now comes the hard bit, where I grind in the more delicate details and risk stuffing up this whole piece, which I'm terrified about. So I rolled a die to see which piece would be sacrificed first.
One.
Now I'm going to try and create an angled section on the side, and I can do this in 2 different ways. The first, by locking the grinding face at an angle. Or I can do my favorite method, which is to lock myself at a 45-degree angle so I'm consistent with my grind. And after combining the two, I created this. So then I just did the same thing on the front to create these cute little triangles, which despite my fears, actually look pretty good. So then I attempted the scariest part, which is a rounded groove cut into metal, which blacksmiths and whitesmiths like to call fullers. So I tilted the belt at this sharp angle and started.
I didn't know they were called
I
fullers.
actually found the best angle for grinding was when
really
I placed
nice.
my head right here, which allowed me to see right along the face. But it also means the metal dust gets a good view of my face as well. And after all this grinding, I was starting to create a bit of mess on the floor with all these iron filings. But luckily, I had a mate who told me a tip, which was to place a bucket of water directly underneath the grinder, which is actually great as it keeps me nice and cool while doing this hot work. Okay, the fullers look pretty good, although it is starting to look more like the G word, which I'm too scared to say on YouTube.
I love
This
this channel,
definitely isn't
Ellie.
a
Can't
G,
you tell?
It's a hammer, not illegal, and it's just a homemade, slightly a dodgy version of something I can buy from stores. So then I switched to this belt, which I found in the bin of a waxing salon. And the tiny hairs stuck to this belt give the metal a really nice finish.
It's pretty.
My God, that's smooth.
And look at that, I'm proud. It actually all looks good, except these little overhanging lips. So I gave it a labiaplasty. Now you're probably wondering how I'm going to stick a handle on this thing. And
It does
so
look
am
like
I.
an object that I
I
can't see on
definitely
Twitch,
should
I
have
think.
planned how I was going to do that from the start, because now
Oh,
I'm just going to have to go with the easiest, worst option,
He
which is
doesn't
most
know
likely
how
going
to
to ruin all of this work. And I'm going to attempt to weld a piece of pipe here and then just shove the handle in like this. And after a quick test, cutting another piece of pipe and welding that onto another piece of metal, and then hitting that as hard as I can against an anvil, I think it might hold. So I just got a piece real hot, squished it in the vise, and then closed my eyes and hoped for the best. And I really hope this doesn't stuff up. This has been my longest project so far and took me a crazy 13 minutes and 59 seconds to get here. And I had to sit through a Nord sponsor and 2 unskippable ads, so this better work. And after filling the piece up with about an inch of lava, the weld actually looks alright and the piece hasn't deformed. So then I cleaned off the black
wouldn't
stuff
call that a
until it was
weld,
shiny
homie,
again, and then
but-
did some research trying to decide on
Do
the
not
finish
weld like
for this
this man,
metal.
you will
And
lose
what
your
I do
eyes.
like is
Yeah,
stonewashing, where you etch the metal in acid. Then people on the internet will get that metal and put it in a rock tumbler to get this nice looking surface which protects the metal from rust and looks rustic. And I don't have a tumbler, so I figured out another easy way to make your own. All you do is you get your metal, put it in your pocket with some stones from the garden, and then put it in the washing machine for about an hour, which gives you this. And I decided I don't actually like this very much, so I'm sticking with the shiny.
I like how he
thing.
did it. It was
But
like,
I'm also
I
gonna
tried,
copy
and then I
what
didn't like it.
every wog that moves to Australia does, and cover pointless parts of it in gold in an attempt to make myself look more serious. Then I grabbed some oil and rubbed it all over the wood before using some quick set epoxy and a bolt to lock the handle in place. Now the instructions of the epoxy don't say you have to panic, but I find I get better results if I use the wrong size bolt,
Quickly.
which I then have to cut down and then burn myself on. I then like to freak out that I'm not going to get the handle in place before the epoxy sets, ruining my whole project, meaning I'm not going to be able to upload a video in time and I'm going to become irrelevant and not be able to upload on YouTube ever again. And it worked. Then I took it back to the beautiful hairy belt to smooth it out. And I do like these hairy belts a lot. But just like the Thai place down the road, I find I get much better results when finishing by hand. And it's done.
It's such a trip for him just to say words. Honestly.
So I decided to do one last vice test just to make sure it all still works.
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
2, 1.
I really feel like he should have done something. Because now look.
I don't know why I didn't place a piece of wood there or something.
Third time in a row.
Let's go upstairs.
Why? Why you do this? Why is he like this? It's very funny, but just why?
Oh,
And I'm very, very happy with that. This thing is powerful and beautiful. Definitely the coolest thing I've ever made. But I just realized that the vise was definitely adding heaps of support on the side and on the bottom of the hammer. So before I swing it by hand, I decided to put it on this rig, which perfectly recreates how my arm works. Which didn't work. And again. Then I figured out what was happening. My hammer was working in the vise, but not for the reasons I intended. I thought the nail was moving back and pushing the blank, setting it off, but that wasn't actually happening. Because I was scared and crouching down to make sure I didn't die, I was actually hitting the top of the hammer, not the nail, which meant I was squishing these two pieces of metal together, setting off the blank. So I switched to a shorter nail so that the end of the hammer would actually hit the table. And
I love his it's just like a yoga, elastic. Oh, here we go.
Yes.
It worked.
Yes. Whoa.
What was that?
Alright, let's hammer some stuff that you shouldn't be able to. Like, this fry pan.
Oh my god.
And it smashed through that easily.
Ah, the power. It's so scary.
But it is pretty thin metal, so let's move on to some thicker metal, like this a barbecue plate, which is 1.5 centimeters thick.
Centimeter and a half thick metal. Oh.
Far out that was a loud one. Okay, it's stuck. Ooh. Whoa. It is.
But it's in there.
Punched a clean hole. You can see the punch marks. Or the way that it kind of blew it out at the back. That is insane.
And after that success, I think I'm going to take it off the rig and have a go at hitting it myself.
He's going to
And
do
I'm
it
honestly
with his
so
hands.
surprised this thing hasn't blown apart yet. And even my dodgy weld seems to somehow be holding up. So I stacked up some stuff in front of me and decided to hit this book.
Oh.
Caveman invents a more powerful stick.
Oh my god, I'm terrified of this thing.
Let's watch the stick work.
3, 2, 1.
Oh.
3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
That was actually fine to hold. Don't go all the way through the table. went through the book, through the table, through this surfboard I have here, and is sticking out. That is insane. I'm going to stop playing with this thing.
That would be a good JRPG
Thank
weapon,
you
yeah.
so much for watching. If you like that,
He makes dangerous stuff. I like him for doing dangerous stuff. Let's see here. World's largest Beyblade powered by a chainsaw. He made a terrifying robot lawnmower. YouTube's worst blacksmith makes a Viking axe. He just makes some just interesting things. Oh yeah, there was this testing dangerous prison life hacks. Why not? Let's
How
see
you
what
going?
happens.
You know how sometimes you're at the self-service checkout in the supermarket and you accidentally select 2 kilos of carrots instead of scanning 2 kilos of fillet steak? Well, I've got some news for you. It turns out that is a crime. And if you do this, the place you and I deserve to be is prison.
Here we go.
And we love locking people up in prisons. We've got the Slammer, the Country Club, the Fortress. Across the world, there are over 10.3 million prisoners, which is more than the population of Sweden. Which is incredibly sad, but what's even sadder is that we haven't locked up Sweden. So, here are my top 3 prison hacks if you ever find yourself locked up for a crime you didn't really think was that bad. Oh, and you're also in a prison that for some reason lets you watch YouTube. Prisons around the world are designed to deprive people of basic rights and any form of mental stimulation. So prisoners often come up with extremely creative and innovative ways to distract themselves from their mundane, cold, hard cells. For example, this boy, Robert Stroud, who was better known as the Birdman of Alcatraz, was in prison for murdering a bartender after he failed to pay a prostitute. And that's actually my first tip. Always pay prostitutes. Robert was extremely fascinated by birds and experimented with them a lot. And eventually, he found a cure for septicemia. Tip 1. How to make hooch. This first life...
Don't follow any of this, by the way, guys. Please don't.
Whether you live in a remote Australian town in which alcohol is banned, or you're a college student who is into fermented stuff and also wants to get dangerously drunk, then this is the tip for you. So the first thing you need are some oranges. You need a lot. Like, I want you to imagine you're a soccer mum that is slicing up oranges for her under 11 soccer team. Except they're actually the under 45s and they have a drug and alcohol problem.
Oi, ref, this is bullshit. Oi, ref, my son hasn't received the ball in like 5 minutes.
So, grab your oranges and any other fruit you can scavenge, like an apple or a carrot for fun, because I've never heard of carrot alcohol before. And peel all of them. And it tastes better if you can get the peel off the orange in one go. Then, chuck them in a watertight bag or some container. Next, grab anything with lots of artificial sugar, like these peaches in syrup, or this jar of artificial sugar, and dump in a good amount. I presume people in prison don't measure things, so I'm not going to either. And the last ingredient is bread. I don't really know why, but I assume it's because the people that wrote this list on the internet thought bread has live yeast in it, which I'm not sure it does, but I'm going to follow it. Now chuck it all in a bag and give it a good squish. And this smells and looks.
This isn't
like
illegal to do here. You just can't sell. No, it's not that it's illegal. It's that it will kill you. This will kill you. Do not do this.
Tuck it away in a nice warm spot, like under some towels or in the toilet. I'm going to keep mine in bed with me, where it's nice and warm. Then make sure to check on it every couple of days and release some of the gas, giving it a good burp. Otherwise, the bag will explode everywhere, all over your new, nice Silk 200 fiber bed sheets. And of course, this isn't an instant reward kind of life hack. It's an investment, because after a week, you get a bucket of the most thirst-quenching vomit you have ever seen. So just drain it through a sieve, and let's give it a taste test. Alright, here we go. So I thought we would drink this outside, which is a nice contrast from the kind of normal place you'll drink this.
It's not a bad prison.
Oh no, thank you.
You've got me in.
Thank you. Now,
Have you ever had prison alcohol before?
Not out of a wine glass.
Not out of a wine
Not
glass?
out of a wine glass.
Okay,
Last time I
nice.
had.
Well, you're in for a treat then.
You're in
It's
for a
gonna be
treat.
fantastic.
Okay. Do you cheers in prison?
You know, I think you do one of these ones.
Yeah, this is... Don't do this. Please don't do this. Please don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this.
It
Don't
tastes
do
like
this.
orange juice, which has been left in the car for too long.
You've had that before?
Yeah, as a kid, I think.
Okay.
10 is the best alcohol.
10 is the best, 1 is the worst. Like, 1 is like goon in a car park, 10 is like...
Well, like, goon would be up at a 10 for me, so I'd say
well, okay.
this would be about... It's not bad, it's a 4.
A 4?
I wouldn't drink it out of choice. There's lots of things I'd choose above it.
But if you were in prison, would you drink
if
it?
If I was in prison, I would definitely drink it.
Yeah, that's good enough, I guess it is.
I would happily drink
prison
it.
alcohol.
Yeah. Cheers. Is this safe for me to drink?
Stop drinking it!
It says that there is a chance you can get botulism from drinking it. But I mean... I don't
Makes
know.
it more exciting.
Exactly.
What drink doesn't have botulism?
And
in
I
it?
think botulism is the stuff that gives you Botox as well, and celebrities look beautiful, so...
So I'm going to come out of prison looking even better.
Exactly.
Nice.
Why do you think O.J. Simpson's so beautiful?
Ah, exactly. Beautiful man.
You think
I don't want to drink anymore.
No.
And it is disgusting, but it's cheap, strong, and a good way to forget you're serving life without parole. And if you're in college, you could totally market this as some kind of magic fermented juice. Call it Hoochie Mama. And sell it for like $10 a pop. So there you go. Spread it around the prison yard and make some friends. So it turns out carrot doesn't ferment well in hooch, and you just gave half your cellmates the runs, and now you need a way to protect yourself. So this is the life hack for you.
Here we go.
I'm going to be making this legitimate terrifying razor whip that was found around 1996 in Santa Fu jail in Hamburg, Germany. It was made by an inmate who was attempting to extort a higher methadone ration by threatening a female prison officer with it. So all you're going to need to make this death whip are the cheapest razor blades you can find,
Death whip.
a shoelace, and a stick. And I really recommend taking the lace off the shoe before you tie on the razor blades. So I bought these El Cheapo razor blades as I thought this is what you were most likely to get in prison. Also, I'm cheap. So I'm going to break apart these men's single-use razors and then attempt to tie the blade onto the rope. And this already seems like a stupid idea. Like, this is going to take a while. I got this from 6 razor blades. Like, how do you get this many razors? Do you just run around stealing all your inmates? That seems like a really great way to start a prison riot, filled with very angry, very hairy men.
Oh, someone's going to break all the razors. Jesus Christ. This whole prison thing's so overrated. I fucking hate prison.
Give me a sec.
So let's just tie them on in a similar fashion to the picture,
Just gonna get that ready.
and then tie it onto the end of the stick.
Because
And there you go. This is absolutely
Ooh,
terrifying.
boy.
I'm scared just holding it. Like, what happens if a breeze picks it up? It'll just slice through me.
You
Although
can
I
figure
guess you
out
don't
what's
have
gonna
much of a
happen
breeze in
next.
prison, so
Something
you're
bad.
all right. All right, let's test its damage. And I'm going to be testing it on this cucumber, which I've placed in a vice, which is actually a very common scenario in prisons.
Cucumber.
And I'm just going to give it a good old whip.
Wow.
And as you can see, I'm not the best at whipping cucumbers. And I wasn't
Is it
that happy with the
doing
damage.
Really anything?
But after watching the slow-mo,
Looks
I
like
think
it's
it would work a
paper
lot better if I threaded the razors onto the lace, running the same way as the rope.
Oh, here we go.
And also, just for fun, I'm going to put a big razor on the end. And
There
look,
we
this
go.
works a lot better. You can see as it wraps around, and then when you pull it back, it cuts through the cucumber. And I think this would be extremely effective if you managed to wrap it around a fellow inmate's cucumber. But I still can't imagine using this in an actual prison fight. But just to be certain, I'm going to try it out on this much tougher carrot. And I managed to cut myself. And I reckon this actually makes a great intimidation device, because people would see you cut yourself and think this bloke is crazy. I'm not going anywhere near him.
Why do you think I
Now,
put the
tip
blur
number
on
3.
it?
Now that you have successfully intimidated everyone,
just-
poisoning them,
Yeah.
and then threatening to cut yourself up with a razor whip, I would imagine that you were the big boss in prison. And everyone's going to be trying to please you by offering you gifts and cigarettes. So this next tip is for you. This one-use lighter is apparently used in prisons all across the world, and all you need to make it is a battery and a pack of gum. And I don't know if prisons actually give out gum, but maybe you could ask to transfer to one of those kind of old school musical prisons from the 50s where everyone leans on the wall and chews on gum all day, then you'll be alright. Alright, I wanted to use 5 gum because I thought it would be funny if I made a joke about chewing 5 gum and ending up in prison, but it was 50 cents more expensive than this one, and the joke wasn't that funny. So I think all we need to do is get the gum wrapper and cut it into a strip and place it across the positive and negative of the battery, and then wait until it heats up.
They will cut you if you without knowing. Yeah, it's so scary. It's so scary.
And all I'm doing is burning my fingers.
Man being a dummy.
And I don't know how to do this. So I reckon now I'm going to cut the foil like this. So the flow of electrons has to pass through a more concentrated strip of foil, which hopefully will offer more resistance and mean that it heats up more. And I've successfully made a prison smoker, which hopefully means I get some fire.
Come on. Come on. Well, his idea.
And
yay!
Fire. So there you go. Hopefully with these hot tips, your next trip to the slammer will be
his theory is right.
Oh, you know what? I just thought of one more hot tip. Follow the rules in society so you can live a happy and fulfilling life free from the constraints of a brutal correctional system.
He's right.
Thank you so much for watching. If you like that, please subscribe and check out my other stuff.
Like, man. Everything this man makes scares me. Okay, last video for today. This is not as bad. It's technical, so it's cool. It's about building a more human internet in NYC. It's from Motherboard. Motherboard does good documentaries.
The reason why the internet is so important today is really because of access to knowledge. When people say that there needs to be equitable knowledge distribution and transfer between people, especially in youth who need to learn, different skills and different trades to succeed in the world, there needs to be a way for everyone to be on even playing field to get that knowledge. Back in July of 2020, a bus came by and snagged that cable and ripped it out from the side of my house. So for 2 weeks, I didn't have internet because my cable provider claimed it was not an emergency, and because of COVID, no one could come out. So I'm sitting here with no internet, and I've been taking online classes since the start of the pandemic. Right now, we have a request. Looks like we have someone asking to be on the mesh. I started looking into my own options, figuring out whether there's 5G I could turn to or there's other technologies I could do.
So it seems like he's
Then
running
I
his
found
own mesh network?
After a member completes the join form, we ask them to send in a panorama of their roof. It's the simplest way for us to determine
I love the monitor
whether to
arm.
have
Yeah,
line of
it's
sight
funny.
to one of our nearby hubs.
Cool.
Following the instructions on the website, I was actually able to do the installation myself. I'm going to go ahead and mark this as a potential link. I just decided, you know what, I want to make sure that anyone who wants this needs to be able to have it. So that's why I volunteered today. You know what, that is a good view of Broadway Triangle. So your building can connect to the mesh. Fantastic. NYC Mesh is a volunteer-run, community-owned network. We prioritize getting access to the internet to anyone who wants and needs it, and we serve as an alternative to the typical big corporate ISPs that monopolize.
Is this like bootleg? It's sort of like bootleg intern. It's more like a bootleg ISP, I think.
Every time I do an install for somebody, I ask why the mesh, and everyone has a story very similar. Oh, they're terrible. Oh, it's slow. Oh, it cuts out when it rains. Oh, they raised my bill by $50 and I can't afford it. That's super common. To counteract that, the people who founded the mesh came up with this idea to own their own network. They don't have to go to a bigger corporate entity just to get help when something is not working.
Existing providers can't make the internet work in New York City for some reason, which is almost unimaginable in 2021. So when I discovered that there was a group of volunteers that were acting autonomously and in a grassroots way to really like solve this problem, I got super excited and wanted to help.
So this area, there's a reason why it's locked, and this is because this is where all of our fibers come in, and this is where all of the other interconnects happen. So when people ask us, like, where does the internet come from? How is the internet built? It's actually one big mesh just with wires. All of the service providers in the city terminate at this location.
Only $20 a month donation.
David asked us to look into getting a new hub that connects down to
That's pretty
this
good.
area. So, you know, check it out. That's a pretty nice building, right? The mesh network uses regular old Wi-Fi signals to connect to multiple nodes at a time. It has to be at least 3 in order to create a solid mesh. That means 3 or more nodes can all connect to each other using the radio waves, and that's how they figure out how to get the internet to the destination, finding the most efficient route through the mesh. Where we are here at the data center is Supernode 3. That has a high-capacity link that goes to the Prospect Heights hub. That has another link that goes up north to the Vernon hub. Has interconnections with Manhattan and other parts of Bed-Stuy and Bushwick. Now, if we come back down to Vernon, a little bit further south, you see the Saratoga hub, where it then connects to a closer hub near my house, 5107. Now we're up to the 10,000s since I joined. You know, 2,515 clients have connected in the past month.
Ooh, wow.
Mesh has really taken off within literally the past year, and it's great to see that progress.
So many people, it makes me happy.
The idea of having internet in public spaces like New York City parks is creating a more humane environment. So that's on the public, right? Whether that's public restrooms or whether that's internet access or facilities for children to play in. You know, those things are essential to create a real community so people can really thrive.
There we go.
There we go.
Really weak signal though, only 1 bar.
Interesting, okay.
In the 21st century, broadband connectivity is a public good. We're trying to recreate that notion of something that everybody in the community can access to and benefit from and thrive from without being behind a lock and a chain, without being behind a password. You should be able to connect to the internet because that's what we need for our 21st century lives. It's an essential service, and volunteers are stepping up to fill that gap.
All right, so probably what we should do is just go up to the roof, and then on the roof we can actually see which AP is which, label everything appropriately, so then we know whether, you know, which one is actually pointing to the north side and the south side of the park.
Oh, so they're gonna go up and try and basically install things?
Hello. Hey, Ian. How's it going?
Good, and you?
Good. We're trying to troubleshoot the signal in the park across the street, and we're hoping to take a look at the antennas up on your roof.
Okay, sounds good. Come on up.
Awesome. Thank
right.
you.
I wonder
I didn't know you were worm composting. That's awesome.
why that's like why this is how this can be a thing that's allowed.
Yeah, they got cooked worm.
I don't know.
So this is the equipment that's shooting signal across into the park and also connecting back to our hub to make the link to the internet. Ladder. Excuse us.
All right, we're on the receiving end of the ladder. Like all members on the network, Ian joined, I believe his story is that he saw a
Wi-Fi uses
on the street pole or something
licensed
for mesh.
spectrum.
And joined like any others.
Oh,
which
yeah,
means
yeah.
we can then
No, I meant
investment
so they aren't
in
breaking
this
FCC regularly.
particular
No, I'm
location,
talking about like
not
the
just do a
physical
regular
thing,
install,
putting it on the
but like
building.
what we're doing here,
That's what I mean.
putting directional antennas to cover Marcy Playground.
But every time we install a mesh node and we add a new member, we add a public access point. And so every member that's getting their own private internet is also supporting a public and accessible internet.
Oh, that's so nice.
Toasty warm.
Yeah, they're blasting at max ERP.
Well, they probably
That's what the mesh is all
yeah,
about.
that's what I'm
Wi-Fi
just trying
being a
to
fundamental
like check.
human right, particularly to people who come from less privileged backgrounds. To me, it's a great thing to be able to share it.
Yeah, they're about.
I think they're good.
Cool.
So now, when I go to Wi-Fi, drum roll, please.
Oh.
Yeah!
Yay! There we go. Connection.
So,
all right. Sweet.
What we're getting for bandwidth?
What we're getting for bandwidth.
Oh, that's looking good. Pilot.
Pilot, baby. Right now, we're working to expand in Harlem, South Bronx now, which is going to be huge for the mesh, which has typically been concentrated down in lower Manhattan and more affluent neighborhoods of Brooklyn.
Ooh, that feels
That's a beautiful view, baby.
Yeah, it is.
To be completely honest, we need to do more work. If we're going to live up to being NYC mesh, we need to be all over NYC. I just think internet access should be recognized as a human resource. That would change how we talk about internet a lot. It would no longer be a commodity. That's my vision. I'm still feeling...
All right.
Just a hair. We need to be able to say, you know, if you want to look up these resources, if you want to study, if you want to collaborate on different things.
It's a lot of, yeah, it's a lot of Ubiquity. Well, Ubiquity is the ones who do the...
Actually looks like
are the
something
Wi-Fi
improved.
peoples, you know?
This is the only way to do it now. Excellent link. Nice.
56.
There we go. Beautiful. So
they doubled the capacity.
we literally doubled capacity. I'm not even exaggerating. Yeah.
Amazing.
It's so cool. I love seeing these public outreach projects, stuff like this. I mean, like we were talking about how, you know, the early thousands had the like they had the one laptop per child movement, which is like it's kind of the same thing, like in connecting everybody. It's just such a hard thing to do, you know? It's just a hard thing to do, try and connect everybody to the internet in a way that's like economical for the people setting it up, and then like it's great. I have so many questions. Like it's really good, really nice questions too, you know? Like what was it? It was nycmesh.org, I think what the site was. Let's look them up. Yeah, there they are. They describe it as guerrilla Wi-Fi. But these are all really nice. High-speed, reliable internet to all New Yorkers. Hey! It's a neutral network and we do not monitor, collect, store, or block any user data or content. So, FAQ. Is there a cost to join? Yeah. Oh, it's... okay. There's no cost to join. If you do a DIY install, you can purchase and install the equipment on your own. We suggest following us to help the average cost. $240. Install expenses, $290. If you're unable to cover the cost of equipment, we encourage you to contribute below, which is subsidized to the contribution as well fellow NYC members. Cost money to... yeah. Yeah, they just, like, suggest the donations, which is, like, really nice for them. This is so cool. It's so... Blockchain? Meshcoin. What's Meshcoin? I'm a little scared. I think the answer is no, which is fantastic. So, yeah, I love these guys. So if you want to donate, it's nycmesh.net/donate, and you can do a reoccurring donation or make a one-time donation. Oh, what do you know? Oh, there we go. They have corporate donors, too. So, let's hear. Mozilla, nice. ISOC, Packet Host, WebAir, Ubiquity. There it goes. And it's 7 and box. Hey, wait, New York's first and leading esports organization. Woo. NYXL equipment. Yo. Hello, teams? Hold up. Yo, it's the NYXL. Yo, one of their sponsors is the New York Excelsior. That's so cool. And the Subliners, which I think is the other team for New York. Yeah. Oh, that's so nice. The Mozilla, like, yeah, but they use the ubiquitous. So, yeah, if you know, if you guys want to support the cause, go ahead. nycmeshagain.net. Network status updates. Oh, and they have, like, just very simple explanations of what's going on, and it's really nice to see this. It's really nice. I love seeing like this stuff. Okay, that's a good way to end the day on a nice note. You know, that's a good way to end. All right. Let's see here. So, of course, thank you guys for tuning in. I always appreciate it. So, tomorrow on our schedule is going to be... What is it? Oh, yeah. It's going to be our watch party. Is going to be our BattleBots watch party in our Discord. So, if you want to watch that, that would be awesome. If you guys want to join, that would be awesome. It's in our Discord. It's going to be 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, of course. Oh, I'm going to send you guys... Oh, this is a good one. This is good. I'm going to send you guys over to a nice friend of mine who is Tane Tenshi. She's a lovely person and has a very cute model. So... And it looks like she's doing lots of just chatting, video watching stuffs. So, you know, a little bit related to us. So, let's see here. No raid, no message or anything. Just be nice, of course. Make sure you save before you go. Have a good one, everybody. I hope to see you tomorrow in the Discord for the watch party for BattleBots if you guys want to watch those, you know, robot carnage, you know. But have a good one. See you guys soon. Bye-bye. And we're going to do ourselves that raid in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.